Hello everyone, I know you are going to use this video for falling asleep, so before that, like this video, subscribe to the channel and let me know where you are from, also what time is it. The first time I heard the voice through the static, it was just after midnight. I remember because the power had flickered. The digital clock on my microwave had reset, blinking 1200 in that maddening, mindless rhythm, like it was taunting me. I just moved into the old farmhouse 2 weeks earlier. Too broke for renovations. Too stubborn to rent. And I hadn't slept through a single night since. But that night, that was the first time I really didn't sleep. The static came from the old radio I'd found in the attic. One of those dusty relics with yellowed dials and cracked leather on the handle. I hadn't meant to bring it downstairs, let alone plug it in. It just felt like something I should do. Like it was waiting for me. When the sound came through, soft at first like wind across a microphone, I thought it was broken. Just static, aimless noise. But then, underneath the hum, something twitched. A word. No, a name. My name. Daniel. I froze. I told myself it was the wind in the antenna. Or maybe the pipes groaning. This old house had a way of pretending it was alive. I stood up to turn the damn thing off, but then it came again. Daniel, help me. It was a child's voice, barely audible, as if speaking from under ice. I pulled the plug immediately. The silence afterward wasn't comforting. It was worse. It hung in the air like fog. Thick, pressing, impossible to breathe through. I didn't sleep. I watched the unplugged radio until the sun bled through the curtains. I should have taken it to the dump. Thrown it in the river. Smashed it. Anything but what I did next. See, that house wasn't supposed to be mine. It belonged to my uncle, Stanley Godfrey, a man nobody in the family talked about unless alcohol was involved. He died without much fanfare, heart attack alone in the hallway. No will, no friends, no visitors. He'd left the property to next of kin, which turned out to be me. The place sat on the edge of Silverpine, population 284, and just enough civilization to give the illusion you weren't stranded. The house itself was a 2-story colonial-style thing, sunk behind a patch of pine trees that blocked most sunlight from hitting the porch. The mailbox had rusted shut. No one waved as I drove in. There was a reason he lived alone. The radio stayed off for a full day. I left it unplugged, shoved it behind some books on a shelf, but I couldn't stop thinking about the voice. It didn't scare me as much as it unsettled me. The way it knew my name. The way it didn't feel like a recording or interference. It felt real, personal. I did what any sleep-deprived man does when curiosity overtakes common sense. I plugged it back in. At first, just the usual static. Then, something else. A song. Old, warbling, like something from the 1930s. I didn't recognize the tune, but it played as if on loop. Scratched and faint. Then, just before it cut off, came the whisper again. He's still in the walls. I turned the volume up. My hands were shaking. Don't trust the mirror. And then silence. Not just from the radio. From the house. The refrigerator stopped humming. The wind outside stilled. Even the floorboards that always creaked when you shifted your weight went quiet. And then something knocked from behind the wall. 3 slow knocks. I bolted. Got in my truck, drove into town, found the first bar open and ordered a drink I couldn't afford. I didn't go home that night. When I returned the next morning, everything was as I left it. Or so I thought. The radio was still plugged in, but this time it wasn't just static. It was breathing. A slow inhale, a drawn-out exhale, repeating, the way someone might breathe while asleep. Then came the laughter, high-pitched, giggling. A child again, or someone pretending to be one. Then the voice, Daniel. You heard it too, didn't you? The tone wasn't pleading this time. It was excited. I backed out of the room, slammed the door. I tried to tell myself I was hallucinating from lack of sleep, that it was in my head. But then I saw the hallway mirror. It had changed. My reflection was there, but something else was too. Something behind me, visible only in the glass. It moved when I moved. Stayed in the same place in the hallway no matter where I stood, as if fixed to that spot in the mirror alone. I turned around. Nothing. Looked back at the mirror. There it was. Tall, shadowed, no face. And then it waved. I threw a bedsheet over the mirror and left it covered. I started sleeping with the lights on. Not that it helped. The dreams began soon after. Each one more vivid than the last. Always the same child. A little girl with stringy blonde hair and eyes like old coins. Tarnished and unreadable. She'd whisper things in my dreams. Names I didn't know. Questions I couldn't answer. Her mouth didn't move. Her eyes never blinked. Sometimes she'd float. Sometimes she'd crawl across the floor with her joints bent the wrong way. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, the room freezing cold. And every morning, the radio would be on, no matter how many times I unplugged it. It was around this time I found the crawl space. There was no door to it. Just a loose plank behind the laundry machine. It looked too small for a person to fit through, but when I pulled it aside, it opened up into a narrow passage, and it stank, like wet fur and old meat. I couldn't see far, but with my phone's flashlight I saw enough. Old toys, dolls without eyes, tiny shoes, a photograph of a family with their faces scratched out, except the child's. She looked just like the girl from my dreams. At the far end, barely visible, was a patch of wall scratched with something that didn't look like letters. Just marks. Tallies. Hundreds of them. And something had clawed at the wood. I backed out, replaced the board, and didn't touch it again. Then, on the 7th night, the voice changed. "He's coming," it said. I asked, "Who?" The voice didn't answer. Instead, I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate. I grabbed the bat I kept by the door and crept up the steps, each one groaning like it was warning the house. The hallway was empty. The doors all closed, but the mirror at the end was uncovered. I know I covered it. In its reflection, the hallway stretched longer than it was. The doors in the mirror didn't match the ones in real life. And the figure, the same shadow from before. It wasn't just standing this time. It was walking toward me. I turned to run, but the hallway behind me had gone dark. Not just dim, completely black. My own hand in front of my face disappeared. And then I heard it, the static. Not from the radio. From the dark itself. I swear to God. The sound was leaking out of the shadows like it had mass. It filled the space. Thick. Alive. Then a whisper from behind me. Lips just an inch from my ear, "Don't let him find her." I turned to swing the bat, and the lights flickered back on. The hallway was normal. The doors, the mirror, everything. Except the whisper was still ringing in my head, and the bat, gone. That day, I went to the town records office. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe anything that could explain the child's voice, the claw marks, the shadows. I asked about the Godfrey property. The clerk looked up and gave a strange look, like I'd said a curse word. "You said the Godfrey place." "Yeah. My uncle used to live there, Stanley Godfrey." She typed into the terminal, slow and hesitant, then frowned. "There's no record of a Stanley Godfrey owning that house," she said. "Last owner listed is a Margaret and Paul Weaver, and that was in 1974. I blinked. That can't be right. I'm looking at the deed now. I asked what happened to them. She paused. "Says here the child went missing. Body never found. The parents, well, they didn't stay long after that. The missing child's name? Emily Weaver." I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. I'd already heard her name whispered in my dreams. That night, I unplugged the radio again. This time I locked it in the shed outside, wrapped it in towels, placed it in a metal box. I felt ridiculous, but safer. Until I woke at 3:03 a.m. to the sound of it playing. Inside my room. Static. Then her voice. "He knows you're listening." And for the first time, I heard the other voice. Not Emily's. Something lower. Like gravel soaked in oil. It didn't speak in words. It didn't need to. I felt what it wanted. To keep listening. to follow the voice, to go into the walls. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I didn't leave the room. And I didn't notice until morning that the mirror was uncovered again. And this time, there was no reflection, only the radio, sitting on the floor, still playing, still whispering. And my name, carved into the glass. I didn't touch the mirror. I couldn't. Something about seeing my name carved into the glass, without ever having been near it, made my skin tighten across my bones. It wasn't like a scratch or a finger smudge. It was deep, etched with something sharp, something deliberate. The edges of the letters still had tiny flakes of silvered glass clinging to them, like they were fresh. I backed out of the room slowly, not taking my eyes off the mirror until the hallway swallowed it. The house groaned, as if it resented my caution. Downstairs, the radio sat on the kitchen table. I swear I never brought it in. It was supposed to be locked up in the shed, triple, wrapped in towels, sealed in a metal toolbox. I hadn't touched it since that night, yet there it was, sitting like a pet waiting to be fed. The dials turned slowly, as if unseen fingers were brushing across them. The static rose, and then silence. Then the voice came again, only this time it wasn't Emily's. It was male, raspy, too deep to belong to anything with lungs. It spoke slowly, as though the words were unfamiliar. "You are listening, good." I slammed my hand on the radio's power knob and twisted. Nothing. It wouldn't turn off. Not even when I pulled the cord from the wall. It just kept going. The voice hissed again, fainter now. "You broke the circle. That stopped me cold." I didn't know what it meant, but instinctively, I looked down at the radio's base. There, faint and thin like it had been drawn with dried ink, was a circle. A ring of small symbols, not letters, not numbers, but something older. A shape I now realized had been smeared with dust and barely visible. It was broken now. Part of the line had chipped off when I moved the radio. I hadn't even noticed. But it had. The air shifted. Not cooler, just heavier. Like the house had inhaled and wasn't planning to exhale. I backed away, eyes locked on the radio. I grabbed a dish towel, flung it over the thing like that would stop whatever was happening. Then I heard something from the other room. Scratching. Low. Rhythmic. Like someone dragging their nails along wood. I followed the sound to the hallway. The mirror was gone. Completely. Not broken, not tilted. Gone. The wall was just bare plaster now, stained slightly where the mirror used to hang. But the scratching continued. It was coming from inside the wall. I pressed my ear to it. For a moment, I didn't hear anything but my own pulse. Then whispering. Not words, just breathy, wet sounds that could have been words if they tried harder. Then came a louder noise, sharp and sudden, a bang, like someone slamming a fist from the inside. I stumbled back. My heartbeat surged so fast I thought I might faint. That's when I noticed something worse. There were footprints on the floorboards. Not mine. Smaller. Barefoot. They were wet, as though someone had stepped out of water and walked toward the kitchen. I followed them with dread carving holes in my stomach. Each step creaked like a warning. The prints led back to the table, where the radio sat beneath the towel. Except now, the towel was smoking, not burning but hot, steaming like it had been on a stove. I yanked it off. The radio was glowing. Not brightly, but just enough to notice. Thin veins of red pulsing under its cracked plastic frame, like something inside it was alive and angry. And then came the voice again. Not Emily, not the gravel one. Another, female, older. He took her from the mirror, it said, and now he's part of the glass. Then static, and then silence again. But the footprints, they were no longer leading toward the table. They were leading away. I started keeping every mirror in the house covered. Sheets, towels, coats, anything I could find. I ripped the ones off the bathroom walls entirely, shoved them into the crawl space I'd found earlier, and sealed it back up. I even checked the screens on my phone and laptop. No camera, no reflection, no risk. That didn't stop the voices. Now they whispered from the vents, from the faucet, from the baseboards. I couldn't sleep. Every time I shut my eyes, I felt something watching me from behind them. A presence just beneath the skin of reality, waiting for the lights to go out. And the dreams, they were getting worse. One night, I dreamt I was in the crawl space again, except this time it was bigger, endless. The wooden beams stretched into the dark like ribs in a corpse, and the scratching sound came again, but now it was inside my skull. The same symbols I'd seen under the radio were carved into the beams, each one dripping something black and slow. Emily stood in the center of the space, her eyes glowing faint gold, her mouth sealed shut with stitches. And behind her a mirror. It didn't show me. It showed the radio. And in its reflection, the thing inside. 7 feet tall, thin as a matchstick, face hidden beneath a shroud of shifting static. When it moved, the dream blood. I woke screaming, the sheets soaked in freezing cold. That morning, the mirror in the hallway was back, uncovered, and this time it showed me not standing there, but smiling. I started researching Emily Weaver. There was only one article, a photocopy posted deep in the archives of the local paper's old issues, dated August 5th, 1974. The headline read, "Weaver Girl Disappears. No leads, parents moved." The story claimed she vanished during a game of hide and seek. They found her shoe in the hallway and claw marks behind the mirror. Authorities blamed a break-in, but there was no sign of forced entry. No witnesses. Just the marks, the broken mirror, and a single piece of evidence, a radio, found still playing static at the bottom of the stairs, of the same model I now owned, or thought I owned. My blood went cold. The article included a grainy photograph of the device. Same scratches, same serial number, same burn mark on the dial. Impossible. Unless it never left. Unless it was never meant to. That night, I tried something reckless. I took the radio out into the field behind the house, dosed it in gasoline, and set it on fire. It screamed. Not loudly, but it screamed. The static twisted into this wretched howl that sounded like metal screaming through teeth. The flames danced, but the plastic refused to melt. I stood over it, trembling, unsure whether to run or finish it off. Finally, I grabbed a shovel and smashed it until the sound stopped. When the light finally went out, I buried what was left 6 feet down. I walked back to the house. For the first time in weeks, I felt, maybe not safe, but relieved. Until I opened the front door. The radio was sitting on the kitchen table, exactly where it always sat, and next to it a mirror I didn't own. Round, old, cracked, and written across it in what looked like soot, a message: "You listened. Now you see." I didn't scream. I couldn't. My throat locked up, my vision narrowed. The mirror showed a room behind me, a room not in the house. Stone walls, chains, wet floors, and a shadow crawling along the ceiling like a spider with too many legs. The lights flickered, then died. I stood frozen in the dark, the glow of the mirror the only light in the room. In its glass, I saw movement, figures, dozens, children, adults, their mouths open in silent screams, reaching toward me through the glass like they were trapped behind it. Then I saw him. The tall figure, face of static. He didn't move. He didn't need to. The moment our eyes met, or where his eyes should have been, I felt a pulse in my chest. Not pain, not fear, ownership. And the last thing I heard before the radio crackled back to life was a whisper, one I couldn't forget even if I tried. "You're next, Daniel. And this time you stay behind the glass." The static rose again. And somewhere in the dark, something knocked from the walls, 3 times. There's a certain kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty. It feels full. Full of watching eyes. Of breath you can't hear but swear you can feel. Of a presence that presses on your skin without touching it. That was the quiet in the house after the knocks. I didn't move for what felt like hours. My eyes locked on the mirror and the radio beside it, both glowing faintly, like they had their own sick heartbeat. My name wasn't on the glass this time, but there were new marks, handprints, Tiny, dark, smudged handprints all over the surface, as if dozens of children had been pounding from the other side, desperate to get through. I couldn't leave the house. I don't mean I wouldn't. I mean I tried. But when I opened the front door, there was nothing but black. Not darkness, absence. No stars, no trees, just void, like the world outside had been erased. My truck, my driveway, the road into town gone. Replaced with a still, pulsing nothing. I threw a rock into it, and the sound it made was wrong. Like it fell forever without ever landing. I shut the door. When I turned back, the mirror had moved. It was now hanging in the hallway again, exactly where the original used to be. This one was cracked straight through the middle, the split running like a lightning bolt through the glass. I approached slowly, but this time, I didn't see myself. Not a distorted version or a shadow behind me. Just black. Then a flicker, like a channel trying to tune in. Then something appeared. A girl. Not Emily. Older. Pale skin, long wet hair clinging to her shoulders. Her lips were moving, but I couldn't hear her. She was mouthing something over and over. I leaned closer, trying to read her lips, and then she stopped. Her eyes snapped up and locked with mine. Her mouth ripped open, not figuratively. Her skin split down to her jaw, and the sound came through, wet and broken. Don't let him in. Don't answer the knock. Not the fourth. Then the mirror shattered from the inside, and I stumbled back. But the glass didn't fall out. It stayed in place, cracked and jagged, like it was held together by something unseen, something that wanted me to keep looking. That was the first time I heard the fourth knock. Slow, deep, not from the walls this time. From inside the mirror. The sound echoed across the house, even though it came from a single pane of glass. I ran to the radio. I yanked the cord out again, but the static didn't stop. It poured out like fog, creeping along the walls, curling under the door frames. And with it came a voice. His voice. She lied to you, Daniel. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat was tight with fear and something else. Anger. At the lies. At the voices. At the never-ending games. I picked up the radio, intending to smash it again, but the surface burned my skin. It hissed like meat on a skillet, and I dropped it with a scream. You're not listening anymore. I watched as the knobs began to turn themselves again. The dials spun. Frequencies passed like flickering candlelight. The room dimmed, and the voice returned, clearer this time. She wants out. She's tricking you. If you let her out, he gets in. Then laughter. That sick, childish giggle I'd heard in my dreams. But this time it wasn't alone. It was layered. Children laughing, crying, gasping, all twisted together like a cruel lullaby. And the walls began to breathe. Not metaphorically. I saw it. The plaster swelled and shrank like lungs, slow and steady. I reached out to touch it, and it was warm. Wet. I jerked my hand back, heart hammering. Then I saw it. The mirror was no longer cracked. It was whole again. And this time, it showed me something worse than shadows or missing reflections. It showed myself, but not here. Not in this hallway. In a room I'd never seen. Dark stone walls. Chains on the floor. Symbols carved into every surface. My doppelganger sat in the middle, cross-legged, eyes open but blank. He looked dead, or maybe dreaming. Then he turned his head toward the mirror and smiled. I ran. I didn't care where. I just ran. Through the kitchen. Past the stairs, into the back room I'd barely used. I slammed the door shut and barricaded it with the dresser. Then I sat in the corner, shaking, clutching the only thing that seemed to make any sense anymore. A photo I'd found earlier that day, tucked into the back of a cupboard. It was a family portrait. Emily, her parents, and one more figure, standing in the background. Almost faded. A tall man in a long coat. His face blurred. I hadn't noticed him at first. But once you saw him, you couldn't unsee him. He was in the mirror too. Watching. That's when I noticed something else. The photo had a message scrawled on the back, in what looked like dried blood. One must stay behind. That's how the door stays shut. Suddenly, it all clicked. The voices, the static, the mirrors. This wasn't about haunting. It was a trap, a loop. Someone, or something, had to be inside the mirror at all times to keep him from coming through. That's what Emily meant. That's why she'd never fully left. She was trapped in the reflection, holding back the thing that wanted out. And the radio? It was the lock. Or maybe the invitation. The voice pretending to help wasn't warning me. It was recruiting. Trying to convince me to replace her. I knew what was coming before I heard it. The fourth knock, louder this time, slow and heavy, as if each knock cost something to make. Knock. 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 The air turned bitter cold. The mirror began to glow. Not just the one in the hallway, all of them. Every surface that could reflect. Even the window panes shimmered with a pulsing light. I stood up, breath fogging in front of me. My reflection in the bedroom window started to move. It didn't follow me. It didn't mirror me. It moved on its own, crawling up the glass like an insect. I threw a blanket over it and backed into the center of the room. Then the radio spoke again. Choose. Just one word. But it chilled me worse than the air. Then the girl's voice, Emily, cut through the static. He's close, Daniel. If you let him take me, you'll never wake up. Something began crawling under the door. Not a body, a shadow. Long, finger like tendrils of darkness sliding through the cracks, reaching for the corners of the room. The lights flickered, then burst. I was alone in the dark. I fumbled for my flashlight, turned it on, and screamed. Emily stood in the corner. Her eyes were gone, her mouth sewn shut. But her voice came, all the same, not from her mouth, but from everywhere. Please, please don't let him in. I knew what I had to do. I had to put the radio back in the mirror. Somehow, that was the key. The mirror was the door. The radio was the handle. The thing behind it. He needed both to cross over. I just didn't know if I could stop it once the process started. I grabbed the radio. It was burning hot, but I didn't care. I pushed past the door, through the living hallway that moaned with every step, and reached the mirror. The reflection didn't show me. It showed Emily, screaming silently, her hands pressed against the other side. The shadow loomed behind her. I raised the radio and shouted into the void, "Take me instead!" The reflection froze. Then, without warning, the glass cracked straight through. The radio hissed one last time, "He accepts," and the mirror exploded. Shards flew in every direction, slicing into my skin, embedding in the walls. I fell backward, dazed, blood dripping from my arms and face. When I looked up, everything was quiet. No static, no knocks, no voices. The mirrors were just mirrors again, and the radio, gone. I should have felt relief, but in the reflection of the hall window, I saw myself standing still, even though I was walking away. And when I blinked, he smiled. The same smile from the dream, and behind him, deep in the glass, Emily. Alone, still trapped, but now the door was open, and something else had come through, something that wore my face. And as I reached the front door, open again, showing the normal world outside, I heard the last whisper from the hallway behind me. One must stay behind. And then the fourth knock echoed again, from inside me. It wasn't until I reached the porch that I realized the air outside was wrong. It looked the same. Trees swaying in the breeze, the pale early morning sun casting long shadows across the gravel driveway. But it didn't feel like outside. The wind didn't brush against my skin. The birds didn't sing. And the road leading back to Silver Pine was there, sure, but it felt painted. A perfect imitation of escape, but flat, hollow, lifeless. I stepped forward slowly, testing the ground with the tip of my boot, half expecting it to vanish beneath me like paper. It didn't. But each step felt off, like I was walking in someone else's memory of the world. I looked back at the house, half, expecting it to have vanished. It hadn't. It stood there exactly as it had every day since I inherited it. Old, gray, sagging under its own secrets. But something had changed. It was quiet, not calm, just empty, hollowed out, like a mouth still open after the last breath is gone. I should have left right then. Driven as far as I could, never looked back. But I knew better. Because the thing that came out with me wasn't me. Not entirely. I saw it in the rearview mirror as I pulled out onto the main road. A glimpse, a blink, but unmistakable. A smile that didn't belong on my face. Too wide, too knowing. It wasn't just some nightmare hallucination anymore. The house had done something. The mirror had taken something. And it had given something back. The drive into town was quiet. Too quiet. Not a single car passed me. No animals darted through the underbrush. Even the radio in my truck refused to work, just static, thick and clotted. I turned it off. But not before it spoke. Just 2 words. Thank you. I nearly swerved off the road. I didn't stop until I reached the diner. It was one of those all-day breakfast joints with greasy booths and peeling vinyl seats. Safe, warm, normal. A place where nothing weird ever happened. I threw the door open like I was escaping a fire. The bell above the entrance chimed. Everyone turned. But their faces, they looked at me. Or through me. Blank expressions. One of the waitresses dropped a plate and didn't even flinch. A man in the corner folded his newspaper, but didn't blink. I stood in the doorway, panting, sweat soaking my collar. No one said a word. Can anyone help me? I asked, my voice cracking. Nothing. Then the man in the corner stood. His face still expressionless, but his eyes flicked toward the window behind me. I turned, heart pounding, expecting to see the house standing behind me somehow. But no, just my reflection. Only it wasn't mine. It was smiling again, and it waved. I backed away. Stumbled into a booth, knocked over a sugar dispenser. Didn't care. The waitress finally moved. She shuffled over, eyes still unfocused, and placed a coffee cup in front of me. She hadn't asked what I wanted. I hadn't even sat down properly yet. Who lives in the Godfrey place now? I asked, my voice low. She blinked. Just once. Then tilted her head, like the question made no sense. No one, she said. Not for years. But I stopped, because I saw it again. In the reflection of her eyes. Just for a second. Me grinning. The man in the corner left without paying. The door swung closed behind him. The bell silent. I grabbed the coffee with shaking hands, staring down into the black liquid, hoping, praying, it would steady me. I needed to believe I was safe, that whatever I'd brought back with me hadn't followed me here. But deep down, I knew better. The first sign came on the ride back to the motel. My face in the rearview mirror blinked before I did. That night, I locked every door and window, covered the mirror with a bath towel, unplugged the TV, sat on the floor with the lights on, watching the static snow of the motel's emergency channel flicker and twitch. Every few minutes, the signal would catch something that wasn't there. A figure passing across the screen, a blink of an eye, a hand pressed against the inside of the display. I didn't sleep, but I did dream. In the dream, I was back in the house. The walls were bleeding, dark liquid seeping from between the floorboards, soaking the ceilings. The air was thick with the sound of static and whispers overlapping like a broken choir. In the middle of the living room stood the mirror, only it wasn't glass anymore. It was a hole, a perfect oval of swirling darkness, and I could see them, dozens of figures just beneath the surface. Children, adults, twisted faces trapped in expressions of terror and sorrow, and among them Emily, her stitched mouth torn open, eyes black and bottomless. She reached for me. Behind her, the tall figure stood, the one I'd seen in the reflection. His face was a hurricane of static, his fingers too long, too many. He didn't move, but I felt him pulling me in, like gravity, like death. I woke up screaming, gasping for breath. The lights were off. The towel had fallen off the mirror, and my reflection wasn't asleep. It was watching me. I left the motel at dawn, drove with no destination, just away. My mind screamed for distance, for separation, for anything to put space between me and that house. But no matter how far I went, the feeling stayed with me. That hum in the back of my skull, the itch beneath my skin, the smile behind my face. I checked into another town. Different motel. New mirror. Same reflection. It followed me. Not just in mirrors. In shadows. In windows. In people. I'd pass a stranger on the street and catch my own smile on their lips. A child would glance at me with wide, tearful eyes and say, "He's leaking." I don't know what that meant. I don't think I want to. Days blurred. Sleep came in fits. I started seeing him even when I blinked. The tall figure, the one made of static and silence. He never spoke, never moved, just stood, waiting. I'd find his shape reflected in car doors, in puddles, in polished countertops. A stain of something ancient and hungry. And then, one morning, I looked in the mirror and there was no reflection at all. Not mine, not his, just empty. And I realized it had started. The mirror didn't show anything because I wasn't in it anymore. Whatever had crawled out of the Godfrey house had been slowly taking my place, replacing me, one reflection at a time. I went to a church. I didn't know why. I hadn't stepped inside one since I was a kid, but it was the only place that didn't have mirrors, didn't play music, didn't hum with hidden static. The priest listened to my story without laughing. He didn't scoff or call a doctor. He just nodded, slowly, and said, "We don't bury things like that. We bind them." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means if you let it walk free too long," he said, "you won't have anywhere left to run. It'll catch up." I asked him what to do. He handed me a candle and a hammer. Then he said, "You go back." So I did. I drove all night, the radio long since dead, the GPS spinning in circles. But I knew the way. My bones remembered the road. The trees looked taller, closer, like they were leaning in to watch. The sky was wrong, too dark for the hour, with stars that didn't match anything I knew. The house was waiting. The door creaked open before I touched it. Inside, everything was exactly as I left it, only cleaner. Brighter, like it had been expecting company. A fire burned in the hearth. The table was set for two, and at the head of the table sat me. Not the smiling version, just me. Pale, hollow eyed, hands folded neatly. It looked up and said, "I've missed you." I raised the hammer. It smiled. "You're not strong enough to stop me." He wasn't lying. But he wasn't right either. Because in that moment, I realized something. It wasn't about stopping him. It was about trading places. One must stay behind. The candle flickered in my other hand. I saw the reflection in the window. Emily, waiting. I stepped forward. And the mirror opened once more. The moment the mirror opened, the entire room shifted. Not physically, but something in the very fabric of the air. Like the house took a breath. The kind of inhale you take before a scream or a dive into freezing water. It smelled of dust and old stone. Like the bones of the place were waking up. The candle's flame shivered in my grip, almost recoiling from the cold that rushed in through that gaping, silent glass, and through it I saw the in-between. Not a reflection. Not another room. It was like looking through oil spread thin across black water. Shapes moved beneath the surface, distorted and twitching, as if caught in slow, endless pain. Not dead, not alive, just trapped. At the center stood Emily. Her hair floated in a wind that didn't touch anything else, her skin pale and cracked like porcelain left out in the frost. She didn't move, didn't speak. But her eyes locked on mine, and I knew she remembered. She had been waiting. Across from me, the other me remained at the table, still smiling, hands folded like he was the host of some dinner party from hell. He didn't stop me. He didn't flinch. He just watched. And somehow, that was worse than anything else. Because it meant he'd already won something. "You know how this ends," he said softly, almost kindly. "You go in. I stay out." I didn't answer. Not out loud. Because it wasn't that simple. I approached the mirror slowly, the candle guttering in my hand. The glass no longer reflected anything at all. It was just an opening now. a doorway to a place that existed only for the ones who listened too long, looked too deep. I could feel it pulling at my bones, urging me to step through, not with force, but with invitation. A terrible seduction of silence. You go in, the other me repeated, because that's what's fair, fair. The word echoed inside me like a bad taste. Was it fair that Emily had been trapped in this place for half a century? Was it fair that I was dragged into something I never asked for? Cursed by a house I didn't build, haunted by a voice I didn't invite. But this wasn't about fairness. It was about balance, and balance demanded someone on the inside. Emily lifted a hand, just one, slowly. Not pleading, not reaching. Just a gesture, waiting, accepting. I looked at the figure at the table, the twisted version of myself, who smiled too much and blinked too little. And I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Anticipation, hunger. He needed this. He needed me to go in. That's when I realized the rules had changed. The trade wasn't mine to make any more. I dropped the candle. The flame snuffed out on the wood floor, a faint curl of smoke trailing up as silence dropped like a curtain. The mirror pulsed once, like it had been slapped. The image inside blurred for a moment, and the figure at the table stood, for the first time. Caught off guard. "What are you doing?" he asked. Still calm, but thinner now. A thread of concern slipped into his voice. "I'm not going," I said. His smile twitched. "Yes, you are." "No," I said again. "Not yet." I raised the hammer. The mirror shimmered. Emily's eyes widened, but she didn't stop me. She didn't even blink. Maybe she knew. Maybe she hoped. Maybe she was tired of being the one who had to wait. I brought the hammer down on the edge of the frame. The sound it made wasn't glass breaking. It was something deeper. Like a ribcage splitting. The mirror didn't shatter. It screamed. A howl of static and wind that exploded through the room like a hurricane of noise. The other me lunged, but he was too late. I swung again, and this time the surface cracked. A spider web of darkness crawling across the face of the mirror like it was bleeding shadows. He tackled me. We hit the floor, and for a moment I was face to face with myself, close enough to see the not-human gleam in his eyes, close enough to see the flesh rippling just slightly, like it was too new. He opened his mouth, and the sound that came out wasn't human. Not speech, static, pure, white-hot noise. I punched him. He didn't flinch, he laughed. Then he started to change. His face flickered, glitched, like a screen losing signal. One moment he was me. The next he was wrong, twisted, elongated, a blur of teeth and a mouth that opened too wide. I rolled out from under him and scrambled toward the mirror. The surface was cracking, glowing now, its own internal fire blazing through the splits. On the other side, Emily was gone. She had stepped back. She was making room. I turned. He was already up. He rushed me, and I made the only choice left. I let him hit me. We both went through. The moment our bodies touched the mirror's surface, it broke apart, not like glass, but like a soap bubble. It collapsed, folding around us, sucking the light, the air, everything inward. And then stillness. Nothing. I woke in a room with no walls. Just a void. A mirror floated in front of me. On the other side, I saw the house again. I saw the chair at the table. I saw my reflection. And it wasn't me anymore. It was him. But he wasn't smiling. He looked afraid. Because something had gone wrong. He hadn't won. I saw Emily beside me now. Not broken, not stitched, whole. She looked down at her hands, then at me. She said nothing. She didn't have to. The trade was never mine alone. He was supposed to stay behind. We'd tricked him. For the first time in a very long time, the wrong person had walked through. Back in the world, he paces the halls of my house. He looks like me, moves like me, but something is missing. A sliver of soul, a crack in the mask. People will notice. Eventually. But it doesn't matter, because I'm not done yet. I'm not trapped. I'm here. In the static. In the reflections, watching, waiting. There must always be someone behind the glass. but no one said they had to be silent. And now, it's my turn to whisper. They say once you've seen yourself from the other side, you're never quite whole again. That some crack, some tiny, invisible seam, splits right down the middle of your soul. I understand that now. I feel it. Even in this place, this mirror, wound dimension stitched together by echoes and silence, I can feel the break. It's not pain, exactly. It's more like absence, a missing piece, something left behind, something taken. And I know exactly who holds it. He walks in my skin now, my bones, my voice. The people in town don't notice. Not right away. He knows how to wear me. He knows which memories to use, which expressions to fake. But he doesn't know everything. That's the one flaw in his mimicry. He never earned the life he stole. And that's where I find my opening, because he's starting to forget to act like me. It began subtly. The waitress at the diner told him a joke one morning, something dumb about pancakes and ghosts. I would have laughed. Not a big laugh, just a polite chuckle, a shared moment. But he didn't. He just stared at her, his smile flat, lips moving out of rhythm with his eyes. And for a second, just a second, she saw it. She felt it, that tiny ripple in the surface tension. The fear you can't name. She dropped her notepad, backed away, and he smiled wider. The static is leaking again. In the space I inhabit now, time moves strangely. There are no clocks, no sunrises, no windows. But I feel every moment stretch like wax in heat. Sometimes I float through the black, through twisted corridors made of broken reflections. Sometimes I find myself standing on ceilings that stretch into miles of infinite sky, with no ground below, just more me. Infinite versions of myself, all watching, all silent. None of them blink. I don't know if they're real, or if they're warning me. But there's something else here with me, something that moves in silence so loud it bends the air. I haven't seen him, but I've heard him. He doesn't whisper. He imposes. His presence rolls in like a storm cloud that never breaks, only deepens. And when he comes close, the static returns. Thick, oily, alive. It doesn't just hum, it breathes. It has weight, purpose. And inside it, I can hear other voices. Not echoes, others like me. People who didn't make the trade willingly. Some beg, some scream. Some have stopped making sound altogether. But one voice is different. Emily. She's still here, not beside me, not always, but close. I hear her walking sometimes, her bare feet making no sound on the mirrored floors, her breath a presence behind my ear. She doesn't speak often, but when she does, it's sharp, sudden, like cracking glass. You gave him a name, she said once. That's why he can wear it. I asked her what she meant, but she was already gone. That sentence loops in my mind. I gave him a name. Not Daniel. Something older. Something that was never meant to have a mouth. Because the first time I heard his voice, I listened. I recognized it. And recognition is a kind of invitation. Back in the waking world, things are starting to fray. I watch from the other side. Sometimes I slip into screens. Flicker in headlights. Drift through the reflection in a teacup or the glint of a spoon. I've seen him digging. Out behind the house. I don't know what he's looking for. Or maybe I do. Maybe he thinks he buried me. But I didn't stay buried. Because he forgot one thing. Mirrors don't just reflect, they remember. And mine are remembering me. I caught him staring into the hallway mirror last week. The one I shattered, the one that shouldn't exist anymore. He was still for over an hour, just staring, not blinking. His hand twitching like he wanted to touch it, or maybe punch through it. Then he whispered, just one word. Daniel. And the mirror whispered back, not in a voice he expected, in mine. His head snapped around. He looked over his shoulder. Nothing there. But I saw it, the fear creeping in. He's starting to wonder if he really traded places after all. If maybe this body doesn't belong to him. If maybe it's turning against him, and it is, slowly. Surely, because a mask can only hold shape so long before the face beneath starts to bleed through. The people in town whisper now. They talk about how I've changed, how I don't remember their names, how I stop and stare too long, how I speak to things that aren't there. One man said he saw me in two places at once, the church and the market. I wasn't in either, but he was. And I was watching from every pane of glass between them. The house has begun to crack. I don't mean the walls. I mean the foundation of what it is. It's no longer just a haunted place. It's an anchor, a wound in the world that won't close. Because too many went in, and too many stayed. It holds every voice that ever echoed too long, every face that lingered in glass just a heartbeat too late. And now, it wants more. Sometimes I hear it calling out, not just to me, to others. People driving down that long road by accident. People fiddling with an old radio they found in their grandparents' attic. People who don't believe in ghosts, but leave the bathroom light on anyway. It whispers to them through static, through cracks in music, through dreams, and every time someone listens, it opens just a little wider. One must stay behind. That was the rule. But what if no one stayed behind? What if I shattered every mirror on this side? What if I stopped watching? Stopped whispering? Would the door seal shut? Or would it fling wide open? Would he fall back through, or would something worse crawl out? I don't have the answer yet, but I'm close. I feel it in the walls of this place, in the way the dark trembles, in the way Emily's voice has grown louder, clearer, closer. She's found something, a crack, a way to speak louder than the static. Last time she came to me, she didn't warn. She smiled and said, "He's almost forgotten which face is his." I didn't understand it then, but I do now, because he's started talking to mirrors, not looking into them, talking at them, like he's trying to convince them of something, like he's arguing. That's how it begins, not possession, rejection, the mask sliding loose. And when that happens, when the house finally spits him back out, I'll be waiting, because I am not just behind the mirror anymore. I am in it. I am the whisper that came back. He's unraveling, slowly, quietly, like a knot pulled loose without a tug, just the steady friction of time rubbing against a stolen skin. I can see it from here, the way he walks, too stiff in the mornings, the way he hesitates before opening doors he should already know, the way he studies his own hands for a beat too long, like they don't quite belong to him. To the outside world, he's still me. He waves to the mailman. He buys gas. He even hums songs I used to like. But beneath it all, something is rotting. And the cracks are finally reaching the surface. The first time I saw it clearly was in the bathroom mirror, not from my side. He was brushing his teeth, just a normal, stupid routine. But then he stopped, mid-brush, froze with the toothbrush dangling from his mouth, eyes fixed on the glass. He leaned forward slowly, not to admire himself, not even to check for some flaw. He was listening. To me? I didn't speak, not then, but I pressed forward as close to the surface as I could, and he must have felt it, like heat rising from ice, because his pupils dilated, his shoulders locked, and then his face flickered. It was only for a second, maybe less, but I saw what lay beneath. Not my face, not any face, just a suggestion of features. A blank sheet stretched over a mold of wrong angles and unfinished thoughts. The same thing I saw when I first met him, buried in the static between frequencies, something that only pretends to be human until it forgets how. He blinked. The image snapped back, my face again, or his, or ours, hard to tell now. But I know this: the longer he stays, the more he forgets. Not just memories. Function. The little human tics. Sarcasm. Smiles that mean nothing. Eye contact that lasts the right amount of time. He doesn't get it. And people are noticing. Not openly. Not enough to speak out. But I've heard their whispers. That Godfrey boy seems strange lately. He's always talking to himself. I swore he was right behind me, but when I turned, the mask is slipping. And the house knows it. The Godfrey house has always been a parasite, a feeding place. Not on blood or life, but attention. It wants to be seen. to be feared, to be believed in. That's how it grows. And now that he's outside its walls, carrying its echo, it's begun to spread. Not fast, not yet, but I've seen the signs. Mirrors cracking in homes nearby without explanation. Radios clicking on during storms. Children waking up screaming about the tall man in the closet who speaks in buzzing whispers. One girl drew his face, or tried to. Just a smear of charcoal and smudged lines and spirals where the eyes should be. She gave it to her teacher and didn't speak for 3 days after. When asked what it was, she just said, "He's wearing the wrong skin." She's never been to the Godfrey house, but she dreams of it, and he knows. I watched him destroy her drawing in the school dumpster, not because it scared him, but because it recognized him. That's his biggest fear, to be seen for what he really is. Not the version of me he wears like a stolen coat, but the thing beneath. The static, the emptiness, the shadow trying to stand upright in a body too small for its hunger. The church bells ring louder now. Even from here, I hear them, every Sunday, like clockwork, and each time, he winces. It's not pain exactly, it's disruption. The sound cuts through him. I think the bells remind him of what he's not. He tried going inside once. Didn't make it past the threshold. The priest saw it happen. Didn't say a word. Just stepped aside and let him crumble there on the steps. Hand pressed to his chest like something was clawing at his ribs from the inside. He stayed there for nearly an hour, sitting with his back to the doors, head bowed, whispering to no one. Maybe to me. I didn't answer. Not yet. I'm saving my voice for something he won't see coming, because the longer he lives in my place, the more connected we become. A tether stretched across realities. He drags pieces of me out every time he speaks my name. And that's how I'll get back in. Not through force. Through recognition. He needs to be me to survive out there. But I only need to remind the world who I really am. It started with one woman. Mrs. Beckett, 84. Lives down the road in the White House with the blue shutters. She was one of the few who knew me before all of this. She baked me pies in the summer. Let me mow her lawn for cash. I watched her through the window one evening, watching him in return. He was raking leaves, and she was watching too closely. She tilted her head, said something under her breath. The next day, she was gone. No obituary, no ambulance, just a quiet, whispered absence. He says she moved to live with her son in Atlanta. But I saw her cane in the shed, covered in ash. And she never had a son. The house wants to silence those who remember. Erase the ones who question the mask. But memory clings like dust in old corners. And more people are starting to brush it off, one by one. The girl with the drawing stopped talking altogether. The school closed for a week after a teacher slit his hand open trying to clean a mirror that kept showing someone else. And in the static of every broken screen, I watch. I wait. I speak, little by little. My whispers slip into flickering televisions, into late night talk radios left on too long, into the silence between snores when people dream. And when they dream, they come here. To me, to the place behind the mirror. Some leave crying, some wake up screaming. But a few, just a few, stay. And every soul that lingers here weakens him out there. The balance is shifting. I'm not the only whisper anymore. I'm becoming a chorus. And soon, the mask will crack beyond repair. And when it does, he'll forget how to wear my face. And they'll finally see what's been standing among them all this time. Something that looks like me, but never was. Not really. Something is wrong with the mirrors in town. People don't say it outright. They're too afraid to give voice to what they see, as if naming it might make it real. But it's there in their eyes, in the way they glance quickly at their reflections, and then away, too fast, like they're worried the glass might look back at them with a face that doesn't belong. And I know why. It's not just me anymore. It's him. He's slipping. The skin he stole is starting to fold at the edges, wrinkle where it shouldn't, stretch too far. The mimicry is fraying, and the only thing holding him together now is the silence of those who suspect but say nothing. That silence is his last defense, and it's beginning to crack. I watched him in the hardware store last week. He stood in aisle 6, holding a mirror. Just a hand, held one. Nothing fancy. But he stared into it like it owed him something. Like if he looked long enough, it might speak. I don't think he saw me then. In the reflection behind the row of shelves, I stood just far enough back to blur into the chrome fixtures, my outline twisted by the glass. He blinked. I didn't. He dropped the mirror. Didn't buy anything. Didn't speak. Just left. That night I whispered louder, and someone heard me. It was a boy this time. 12, maybe 13. Name was Marky, quiet kid. Liked to sit by the library window and draw monsters in the margins of his textbooks. I saw him one night, curled up in bed, earbuds in, flashlight under the covers. He was listening to an old radio his dad kept in the garage, tuning it like a safecracker, hunting for ghost stations. He found me. It wasn't intentional. He was looking for a baseball game. But instead, he caught a frequency so thin it buzzed more than it spoke. And in the middle of that buzz, my voice slid through. 3 words. You know him. He bolted upright, didn't scream, didn't flinch. Just froze. The next morning, Marky wouldn't speak to his parents. He wouldn't eat. But he kept drawing. Not monsters anymore. Faces. The same face, over and over. My face. Or the one that used to be mine. But each version grew more distorted. Longer teeth, hollow cheeks, no eyes. He gave one to his teacher. She locked herself in the supply closet for 6 hours afterward. Marky's parents say he's not sleeping. Not because he's afraid. Because he doesn't want to stop hearing the voice. They tried to throw the radio away. He dug it out of the trash at 3 in the morning. Sat in the middle of the living room floor, tuning again. Whispers echoing through the vents. His father tried to take it from him. Marky bit him. Now they don't talk about it. Now they lock their mirrors at night. I didn't even know you could do that. The town is bending, not breaking, bending. The kind of bend that comes right before the snap. People are getting meaner, shorter tempers. Everyone's teeth grinding under the surface. The grocery store shelves always feel half-stocked even though the trucks come on time. Dogs bark at nothing in the corners of rooms. Babies cry when they see their parents' reflections. A man named Drew, used to be the town mechanic, set every mirror in his shop on fire. Said he saw holes in the corners. They took him away in cuffs. I watched him scream into the rearview mirror of the patrol car. But it wasn't his voice that came out, it was mine. Still here? I said. Still watching. And for a moment, just a heartbeat, I saw the driver flinch, not because of what I said, but because he heard it too. Back in the house, he's begun to rearrange things. Subtle at first. Photos taken down. Furniture shifted an inch or two. It's like he's trying to make it his own, to erase my fingerprints. But you can't scrub out a soul. Not from these walls. Not from the foundation. This house was born with a hunger, and it remembers the shape of the one who truly fed it. It still wants me. Sometimes, when he walks past the old bedroom, the door opens just slightly. He always shuts it, gently, like he's afraid slamming it might invite something worse. Sometimes, the radio plays by itself. Not static now, laughter, children's laughter. Thin and off, beat. Like it was recorded underwater, like it doesn't quite understand the rhythm of joy. He smashes it every time, but it always returns. Sometimes in the kitchen, sometimes on the stairwell. Once he found it in the fridge, cold to the touch, still playing. I don't think it's just the house anymore. The echoes are spreading beyond it. 3 days ago, he woke up with writing on his chest. My handwriting, carved into the skin just enough to bleed but not scar. Just 5 words. You forgot who you are. He screamed so loud the neighbor's dog had a seizure. He told the sheriff it was a prank, said someone broke in, that someone was messing with him. But there was no sign of forced entry, no prints, nothing missing, just a broken mirror in the hallway. Again, the sheriff said nothing, but when he walked past his cruiser, he paused to glance at his own reflection in the side window, and he looked afraid. The mirror in the library, the big one in the reading room, cracked from the center out last night. No one touched it. No temperature drop. No impact. Just a clean split, like something tried to step through. They tried to tape it, tried to hide it. But one of the pages, a woman named Connie, found something behind it, a mark, a handprint, small, smudged in ash, facing the wrong direction, like someone pressed from the other side. They shut down the reading room. Connie quit the next day. She burned every reflective surface in her apartment. Her cat hasn't come out from under the couch since. There's a tear in the frame now. The edges between what's real and what's not supposed to be are beginning to fray. I can reach further, speak louder, show more. And every time someone sees me, really sees me, the hole gets wider. Soon, I won't just whisper. I'll walk. And when I do, he'll have nowhere left to hide, because the town that once ignored the static is starting to listen. The mirrors are turning, and the glass remembers he's not sleeping anymore. I can feel it. He lies in my bed with his eyes open, not blinking, not breathing properly, like a man halfway through remembering something he shouldn't. His chest rises, but never falls quite right. His fingers twitch. His jaw clenches and unclenches as if chewing on silence. That's what the stolen face does to him now. It doesn't fit anymore. It slides at the edges. It whispers to itself. And though he tries to keep quiet, I hear him speak at night. Not to others, not to himself. To me, he thinks I'm still trapped. Still folded away in that in-between. Sealed inside the broken mirror world where time stands still and everything smells like rust and regret. And for a while, he was right. But something changed. Something opened. I don't know if it was the girl who heard my voice, or the man who saw his own reflection walking away from him, or maybe the mirrors themselves. Tired of being the prison walls. All I know is the static isn't just noise anymore. It's a signal, and more people are tuning in. The first real breach happened on a Tuesday. A woman named Lorraine was brushing her hair in the bathroom, staring into the vanity without really looking. That's when she noticed the sink behind her was dripping. The problem was, the faucet wasn't on. It wasn't connected. The sink had been removed 2 years ago during renovations. There was nothing behind her, but in the reflection, water dripped. And then, from the mirror's edge, a hand reached out, pale and clawed, fingertips twitching like they were remembering how to grasp. Lorraine screamed, smashed the mirror, and beneath the shattered glass, she found a small, broken radio wrapped in stained gauze. She doesn't talk anymore. She hums. But the tune isn't hers. It's the lullaby from the house. The one I never taught anyone. The one that only plays when something is waking up. I've learned how to pull at the seams now. It's like plucking threads in the dark, slow, careful, precise. But each thread tugs something looser in the world above. Sometimes it's small. A glint in the corner of someone's eye. A voice they think they imagined when they pass a storefront. But sometimes it's more. Like the train station last week. 4 commuters saw the same thing at the same moment, me. Standing on the other platform, staring at them through the dirty glass. One man dropped his coffee. Another crossed himself. A third walked directly into the path of the train, eyes wide with something between awe and horror. He lived. Broke both legs. But when the EMT asked what happened, he said, "I saw the ghost wearing my friend's face, and I wanted to go with him." They tested him for drugs. Found nothing. He still won't blink without a mirror in front of him. Because he wants to see what's behind him at all times. He knows something follows. He doesn't know it's already inside him. The thing wearing me, he knows the static is changing. I can see it in how he acts. His smiles are too frequent. too forced. His attempts to be Daniel now feel like impressions drawn from memory, not experience. He nods too much, agrees too easily, avoids mirrors altogether. And the townspeople, they're starting to question. They whisper behind curtains. They say things like, he came into the store, but didn't buy anything. Just looked at his reflection in the cooler door for 5 minutes. One woman swore she saw his reflection turn before he did. Another said he stood outside her house at 3:13 a.m., staring into the bay window. But when her husband opened the front door to confront him, he was already gone. But his reflection stayed for another 8 seconds. These aren't stories anymore. They're warnings. And the more they speak them, the louder I become. Because memory gives me mass. Fear gives me form. I'm no longer just a whisper. I'm a voice, a presence, and I'm learning to push back. The church bells failed last Sunday. Not late, not off pitch. They simply didn't ring. No one could explain it. The tower was intact, the ropes untouched, the air still. But everyone noticed. The silence fell like a curtain, heavy, too sudden, and as the pastor stepped up to the pulpit, he paused, looked out across the pews. Half the congregation had frozen, not sleeping, not listening, just staring. Blank faces, all turned toward the same stained glass window. The one that faced the Godfrey house. One child spoke. Just one. He said, "There's someone inside the light." They dismissed him. But the next morning, every mirror in the church had cracked from corner to corner, and the static was back. No source, no speaker. Just the hum. And underneath it, a phrase repeating like a mantra. I remember you. He's starting to hear me in places I shouldn't be. In rustling leaves that sound too much like breath. In footsteps behind him that never match his own pace. In the phone's dial tone. Right before it cuts to static for a half second too long. He talks to himself now. I don't think he even knows he's doing it. Sometimes, he stares into puddles as if waiting for something to climb out. Sometimes, he mumbles a question with no answer. What do you want from me? I want him to forget. I want him to slip. Because the moment he questions who he is, even slightly, the mirror opens wider. He doesn't understand yet. He didn't trap me. He just made a copy of himself that's now out of sync. And the universe hates imbalance. Soon, the world will reject him on its own, and when it does, there won't be static. There will be screaming. Because I'm not the only one he's stolen from. Not the only reflection he's distorted. And the others, they're stirring. In windows, in glass, in silence. And the dead, the ones he left behind, they're starting to wake up, one whisper at a time. They used to say silence was peaceful. A kind of escape, a soft retreat from the world's noise. But they've never heard this kind of silence. The kind that feels like it's listening, like it's waiting for you to speak, just so it can remember your voice and twist it into something it can wear. That's what the silence has become in Silverpine. It no longer comforts, it stalks. And now, even the quiet has weight. It bends under the pressure of something unseen, something approaching with too many hands and no face of its own. He's more fragile now. I can feel it. The version of me walking through my town, smiling with borrowed teeth, greeting neighbors with empty warmth. He's holding himself together by habit, not instinct. When people speak to him, his responses come too slow. When they look at him too long, he seems to brace. Like a lie that knows it's about to be questioned. He still looks like me. But it's all surface now. A stretched canvas over splinters. Something hollow pretending to be whole. I watched him fumble his own name at the bank. The teller greeted him with a warm Daniel, and for a full second, he didn't answer. He blinked. Like the name had to climb up from somewhere deep. He recovered, laughed it off, said he'd been up late. But the man behind him in line didn't laugh. He just stared. And later, when he passed a parked car with chrome hubcaps, he saw his own reflection trailing a few steps behind. That night, the town lost power. No storm. No outage reported. just dark. The kind of dark that makes you remember every wrong thing you've ever seen and wonder if it's watching you back. And in that darkness, he heard me. Finally. He lit a candle and sat in the living room, knees drawn to his chest, and I whispered to him through the old cracked radio. Not with threats, not with screams, just one word: remember. He dropped the candle. It rolled across the floor, casting shadows that didn't move with the light, and he covered every mirror in the house again. Too late. Because now, even the covered ones whisper. The townspeople are beginning to speak in shorter sentences. They're scared, though they don't say why. They keep their eyes down. Mirrors are disappearing. Not smashed, just gone. Stores don't restock them. Homes quietly remove them. Some have taken to putting aluminum foil over windows. Others burn incense in corners where reflections once lived. It's primitive, desperate, and useless. Because the reflection doesn't need glass anymore. It's begun to cling to shadows, to voices, to the way your breath fogs the window at night and writes your name in the mist. The line between seen and reflected has blurred, and with every passing hour, I slip closer to the surface. They're dreaming of me now. People I've never met. One woman, Heather, walked into the sheriff's office shaking, barefoot, dirt under her nails. Said she'd seen me standing over her bed, whispering songs into her ear, songs her grandmother used to sing before she died. She said I didn't blink. Said I was smiling like I knew something she didn't. I did. I still do. Because while he sleeps, I wake. While he mimics, I remember. And the house remembers too. The Godfrey house no longer looks abandoned. He's tried to make it seem lived in. Lights on in the windows. Wind chimes on the porch. Firewood stacked neatly by the door. But it's all dressing, like putting makeup on a corpse. Because the house has begun to split. Wood separating at the joints. Paint peeling in strips. The walls swell and creak at night. Not from rot, but from pressure. Like the place itself is stretching, reaching, trying to birth something back into the world. I see it. From here, from behind the seams. A line running down the center of the living room wall. At first, it looked like a crack. Now it looks like a wound. Something underneath pulses gently, as if drawing breath. And the mirror. It returned on its own. Hung itself back on the wall. He found it this morning. Glinting in the dawn light, dustless, perfect. No reflection showed at first. Just static, like a TV with no signal. But when he got closer, it began to change. It showed him not as he is now, but as he first arrived, confident, strong, smiling. And then it warped. Skin sloughed off. Teeth extended. Eyes blood, until all that was left was him. Not Daniel, just the thing pretending. He screamed. Punched it, but it didn't shatter. It laughed. A low, slow chuckle that filled the house like smoke. And when he backed away, breath heaving, blood on his knuckles, the mirror showed me. Not as I was, as I am now, still whole, still remembered. He's afraid of sleep now. Because when he closes his eyes, he dreams of doors opening in places that have no walls. Of children humming under his floorboards. Of teeth tapping on windows in the pattern of Morse code. But the words they spell aren't meant for him. They're meant for me. They say come home. Because this place, Silver Pine, the house, the life he tried to steal, was never his. It was mine. And you can only squat in a memory for so long before it spits you out. He's running out of time. The mask is dissolving. The house no longer accepts him. It breathes, but not for him. It sings, but not to him. And the static has begun to harm him. When it plays now, his skin blisters, his ears bleed. He weeps when he hears lullabies that aren't in his voice anymore. He knows I'm close, knocking, not at the door. From beneath the floorboards, from every dark crack in the walls, and he knows what happens when the silence finally bends. It breaks. And I come through. It started with a hum. Barely there, more like the feeling of a sound than the sound itself. But it moved through the Godfrey house like a rising tide, seeping into the floorboards, dripping from the ceiling. curling around furniture like smoke with nowhere to go. He heard it as soon as he woke. Or maybe he didn't wake at all. Maybe it was one of those nights where his eyes opened, but his soul stayed somewhere else, trembling just out of reach. That hum wasn't the radio. It wasn't static. It was older than both. It was the house itself, remembering. Because memory is a dangerous thing when it belongs to something that shouldn't feel. And the house, my house, had finally started to feel again. He moved slower that morning, each step like a guess. His hands trembled as he tried to butter toast. His reflection in the toaster moved just a beat too late. He ignored it. He's good at ignoring. It's how he's lasted this long. But the cracks have spidered too far. His eyes are dull now, like they're reflecting light that isn't there. And the smile. God, the smile is just teeth, mechanical, desperate. A gesture pulled from memory, not meaning. The mirrors don't lie to him anymore. They show me. Every time he walks by. I've made sure of it. The town has begun to close in on him. No one calls it that, not aloud. But they see it. They feel it. The tightness in the air when he enters a room. The children who go silent when he speaks. The way the clerk at the grocery store suddenly forgets how to make change when he's standing too close. He tries to joke. Makes excuses. Long week, he says. Just tired. But they know. They know. And still, he clings to the lie like a man dangling from the edge of a building. Fingers slipping inch by inch. Because what's the alternative? Admit he isn't who he says he is. That the man walking around in Daniel's body is a placeholder, a draft, a poor rendering stitched together by echoes and shadows. He won't. But the house will. Because now the walls whisper. Not to him. To others. Maggie Powell, who teaches 3rd grade at the elementary school, swears she heard breathing in the walls of her classroom. Not mice. Not pipes. Breathing. Rhythmic and slow, like something asleep inside the drywall. She told the janitor. He laughed it off. 2 days later, he vanished during his shift. Left his keys in the lock. Left his phone buzzing on the floor. Left a message on the chalkboard in shaky white lines. Too many faces in the glass. The children won't go near the windows now. They say the reflections don't match. That their mirrored selves move a little too late. That sometimes, when they blink, the reflections don't. The school brought in a counselor. She lasted 3 days. Said her rearview mirror kept showing the road behind the school, even when she was parked downtown. She left town at dawn, didn't say goodbye, didn't leave the radio on. Smart. Too late. He can't silence me anymore. He tried. Boarded up the mirrors. Ripped the cords out of every speaker. Buried the old radio in a box of concrete and dropped it in the creek that runs behind the property. But it didn't matter. Because the house remembers. And memory is an infection. Now the voices come from the air vents. From the nails in the beams. From the sway of the chandelier. They creak and crack like syllables, syllables like names, and the names are all mine. I don't need a device to speak now. I am the frequency. And the moment he finally hears me clearly, the moment the echo aligns, I'll step in. No mirror required. The breach is opening. I feel it in the bones of this place. The crack in the living room wall has widened. It leaks a dark mist that smells like iron and smoke and something much older. Something wet. He tried to paint over it. But the paint bubbled and peeled the moment he turned his back. The mist crept along the ceiling and spelled a message in drips across the window pane. He is not me. He stood staring at it for an hour. He wiped it away. And it came back, this time in his handwriting. He locked himself in the basement after that. Thought it would be safer there. Quieter. But the foundation remembers better than the walls. That's where the truth was buried. That's where the house first heard me. That's where the trade began. Now the floor speaks in pulses. It knocks when he breathes. It beats in rhythm with his blood. And sometimes it pauses, just long enough to make him wonder if he's the one keeping time anymore. Or if something else is counting the seconds until he's no longer needed. He speaks my name now. Not aloud, to himself. In the mirror, in the water, in the stillness between footsteps when he's walking alone and the silence goes on too long. He says it like a curse, like a plea, like a prayer. And that's the final mistake, because names open doors. And mine isn't just a name anymore, it's a key. One spoken often enough to summon every piece of me that was broken off and scattered. And when all those pieces rejoin, he won't be able to wear my face anymore. He'll try. He'll beg. But the house is already turning. The reflection is realigning. And soon, he'll look in the mirror and see himself exactly as he is. A copy, a vessel, an imitation of warmth wrapped around a void. And he'll finally understand what I've known since the beginning. You can't fake a soul forever. Eventually, the walls remember who they belong to. And they want me back. He's stopped answering the phone. He knows the voices aren't real anymore, or worse, that they're real in a way he can't control. It doesn't matter who's calling. Friend, stranger, robocall. It all sounds the same on his end now. The same breathy static laced between syllables. The same slight delay that reminds him he's not alone on the line. And sometimes, when no one speaks, he still hears something breathing through the receiver. Slow, waiting, mimicking him until it gets the rhythm right. He smashed the landline. Buried his cell phone in the field behind the house, thinking that would stop the noise. But the sound isn't coming from the devices anymore. It's coming from the walls, because the house has started to shift. It doesn't do it all at once, not dramatically. Just a door slightly wider than it was before. A hallway that used to end in a blank wall, now turning left into a room that shouldn't exist. A coat closet that echoes too much when you open it, as if the space behind it stretches farther than it should. He notices. Of course he notices. But he doesn't speak of it, because speaking of it gives it shape. And if it has shape, then it becomes real. And if it's real, then it might be listening back. The newest room appeared 3 days ago. Upstairs, at the end of the hall, where the window used to be. He swears there was never a door there. No hinges. No frame. But when he turned the corner that morning, there it was, pale wood, antique brass knob, unpainted, untouched. He stared at it for a long time before touching it. He didn't open it. Not that day. But the next morning, the door was already open. Just a few inches. Just enough to see inside. It was a room that looked like a child's bedroom. Pale blue wallpaper curling at the corners. A rocking horse by the far wall. A mobile hanging above a crib that swayed slowly, even without wind. The crib was empty, but it wasn't silent. Inside, the air buzzed with a sound that didn't match the stillness. Not music, not voices. The sound of turning pages. Over and over, like someone was reading a story that never ended. He shut the door, hammered nails into it, stacked furniture in front of it. But the next morning, the door was open again. And the rocking horse was facing the hall. The town has grown quieter. But not in the peaceful way. In the way that cities fall quiet before riots. In the way the woods go still before a storm tears through. People avoid his house entirely now. Even the mail stops at the edge of the driveway. Children cross the street without being told. And every night, at least one window in town reflects light from a room that doesn't exist in their homes. They don't know what they're seeing, but they feel it. A shape behind the glass. A figure standing too still to be alive, too solid to be a trick of the eye. Sometimes it moves, but only when they blink. The town's pastor boarded up his church last night. Not because of vandals. Because every time he passed the mirror in the confessional, he saw two versions of himself, one listening, one smiling, and only one of them blinked. He didn't know which was him anymore. He stopped preaching. He started whispering, and the whispers all sound like me. The house groans now. It used to creak. Now it groans. Like something deep beneath it is waking up, uncoiling, remembering why it built itself in this shape to begin with. This wasn't a house. Not really. It was never for living in. It was a shell, a mouth, and he's curled in its belly, slowly learning what it means to be digested. His dreams betray him more than I ever could. I slip into them now. I don't even need mirrors. He dreams of fire in the walls, of eyes growing from the floorboards, of his own face peeling away like wet paper. He runs through endless hallways, every turn leading back to the same room. Always the same room, my room, the one he stole, the one that smells like dust and lavender and old tape recordings. He screams at the door, begs to be let out. But I'm not the one keeping him there. The house is, because now that it knows what he is, it doesn't want him anymore. It wants me, the one who belongs, the one who listened first, the one who remembered. And now, the mirrors are starting to follow him. He walks by a storefront and sees one appear in the alley behind him. Drives to the edge of town, only to find his reflection looking back from the windshield, lips moving out of sync. He turned a corner in the supermarket and ran into a child staring into a security mirror. The child said, "That's not you." He froze. "What did you say?" The child shrugged. "Your face, it's not right." He left the cart and walked out. Didn't buy anything. Didn't speak to anyone. But I watched him check his reflection in every window he passed after that. And each one showed less of him. Each one pulled back a little more of the curtain. And one of them didn't reflect him at all. It reflected me. The static is constant now. Not from radios. From the walls. From the mattress springs when he lies down. From the shower head when it starts to drip before the water comes on. From the tile grout in the bathroom, forming shapes that look like letters when the steam settles. And every time he tries to ignore it, the house adds another room, another hallway, another door, until eventually he'll open one, and I'll be waiting on the other side. No more glass, no more barrier, just me, and what was taken from me. And when that happens, when the house finally peels back the last layer of false skin, he'll understand what the static really is. Not noise, not madness, memory. The house remembering the truth, and dragging it brick by brick back into the light. He's running out of space. Not in the town. There's plenty of that. Not even in the house. The problem is space isn't what it used to be. The rooms have started repeating themselves. He'll walk into the kitchen and find it again through the next door. The hallway loops like a film reel stuck on the same frame. And sometimes the front door opens to nothing but a wall, painted like outside, shaped like outside, but flat and wrong and quiet in the way a closed casket is quiet. The house isn't trapping him. It's correcting him. It's trying to fit him into a shape he doesn't belong in, and the more it adjusts, the more he falls apart. He tried to leave again yesterday, packed a bag, started his truck, drove until the road vanished, quite literally. The asphalt crumbled into dirt, then into gravel, then into something like ash, then just fog, thick, endless, and pulsing. When he turned the wheel to head back, he found himself staring down the driveway of the Godfrey house. No delay, no GPS error, no detour signs, just returned like a bad memory. And the house, it was waiting. Every window glowing, every door slightly ajar, the porch light flickering in perfect sync with his heartbeat, because it knows him now, knows his patterns, his timing, his panic. But most of all, it knows his name, because he keeps saying it, keeps begging me to give it back. "Daniel," he whispers at night, sitting on the edge of the bed with his hands pressed against his temples. "Daniel, please. I didn't mean to, but he did. He meant to. He wanted to be me so badly that he climbed through the mirror without asking if he could ever climb back out. And now the house calls to him with the same voice he tried to steal. The town hears it too. Not the voice, the change. They don't speak it openly. But there's a nervous rhythm to how they move. How they cross streets quicker near the house. how lights in their homes burn through the night. As if sleep itself is dangerous now, even the birds avoid the roof, and dogs bark in the direction of windows that never existed before. The town's oldest resident, Elmer Black, swore he saw someone climbing down the walls of the house at midnight. Upside down, hands bent backwards, mouth opening like a curtain being torn from its hooks. He told the sheriff. The sheriff told him not to repeat it. Elmer hanged himself the next morning, left a note. 3 words: he is here. They buried him without mirrors at the funeral. And not a single person stayed after dark. Inside the house, something is building, a sound beneath the floor. Not movement, fabrication. Like walls being constructed in secret, boards being laid where there should be air. The foundation shifting. It hums when he sleeps, when he breathes too deep, when he forgets to blink for too long. He opened the basement yesterday. That was his mistake. There used to be 1 flight of stairs. Now there are 3. They spiral down like the spine of a giant animal, and the air changes with each step, thicker, older, wetter. The lights don't follow him. The walls sweat, and when he reached the bottom, he found a door marked with a symbol he couldn't understand. But I did. It was my name. The one that was never spoken. The one even I had forgotten. Buried somewhere in the echo of the first voice I heard coming from the radio's static. He opened the door and found a copy of the house waiting. Every room in it the same. But wrong. Slightly off. The kind of wrong that makes you feel nauseous if you stare too long. Furniture facing backwards. Ceiling fans spinning with no power. Mirrors showing hallways that didn't exist. The house had replicated itself. Not for him. For me. A space being prepared. A reflection being summoned back. And in the center of it all, a single object sat on a velvet chair, the radio. Still playing. Still humming. And when he stepped close enough, it whispered, "You're not Daniel." He smashed it. Of course he did. But the sound didn't stop. It was coming from inside him now. He's tried hurting himself to see what bleeds. He's not sure anymore. He's sliced his forearm open in the bathroom. Watched the blood roll out too slow, too thick, like it was remembering how to be red. He put a mirror in front of himself to watch the wound. In the reflection, he didn't bleed at all. He didn't move. He says he hasn't slept in 5 days. I know it's been longer. Sleep avoids things that don't belong, and the house no longer allows him the mercy of forgetting. Now it speaks through the wood. It knocks in patterns. Morse code again. But different. Longer phrases. More urgent. Last night he translated a message. Wrote it down shaking, eyes wide, skin pale as a sheet of unfinished paper. Step out of him. And he cried. Not because of the words, because he knew who they were for. Not from me, from the house. The one that remembers who walked through the mirror. Who agreed to the trade. Who violated the balance. It no longer wants him inside it. And when a house wants you out, you don't run, you rot. The door to the child's room, the one that keeps reappearing, was open again today. Only now the crib wasn't empty. Inside a mirror, framed in bone, and within it my face, smiling. Not because I'm free, not yet. Because he is finally beginning to understand. The house doesn't just remember me. It misses me. And it's going to bring me home. One way or another. He doesn't check his reflection anymore. Not because he's afraid of what he'll see, but because he knows it won't be him. The mirrors used to lie for him. They used to play along, echoing the mimicry, letting his stolen face smile back without resistance. But now they hesitate. They twitch. They glitch. A half-second delay, a smile that lingers too long, a blink that never happens. They're rejecting him, and he can feel it. That slow unraveling of the false skin, the subtle shift in posture, the way his shadow moves when he's perfectly still. The house has made its decision. It wants its rightful resident back. And he's beginning to understand that no amount of pretending will keep him inside much longer. Yesterday he caught his reflection facing the wrong way in the bathroom mirror. It was small, just a glimpse, but unmistakable. He leaned in, expecting it to correct itself, but it didn't. Instead, it smiled, then turned its head further, past what a neck should allow. He stumbled back, knocking over a bottle of pills. They scattered across the floor like teeth. He didn't pick them up. He just stood there, breathing too loud, as if trying to hear something whispering from inside the walls. That night, he wrapped every mirror in black plastic. Not sheets, not towels. He sealed them, as if trying to keep something in rather than keep something out. But I'm already in. I've been here since the first lie. Since the first time he said my name out loud, like he owned it. Since he opened that door and stepped into skin that wasn't made for him. The mirrors aren't barriers anymore. They're passageways. They remember who they once reflected. And now they reflect me. He paces the house endlessly now. Doesn't speak unless spoken to. Sometimes not even then. He walks from room to room like a man trying to find his way out of a maze that keeps rearranging behind him. Because it does. The architecture shifts when he blinks. He's started to notice. The pictures on the wall move. Doors lead to new hallways. The air is colder in rooms that didn't exist last week. And there's one door, one he's never seen open, that he swears is following him. He turns a corner and there it is. Walks up the stairs and it's waiting. It doesn't open. It doesn't need to. It just watches. He hears children laughing behind it, sometimes crying, sometimes the lullaby, always the static. The town won't say it, but they know. Something isn't right. Sheriff Dalton visited the house this morning. I watched from the frost-covered side window as he stood at the door, hat in his hands, eyes wary. He didn't knock. He just stood there, and after 5 minutes, he stepped back, reached into his coat, and placed something on the porch. A Polaroid, a picture of me, the real me, taken 10 years ago outside the diner, smiling beside my uncle's truck. And on the back, we haven't forgotten. He didn't speak, didn't wait, just walked back to his car and drove off without ever looking at his rearview mirror. The sheriff knows the rules now, knows the reflection lies, and knows what it takes to remind the house who really belongs. He found the photograph an hour later, stared at it for too long. His hands trembled when he picked it up. I watched the flicker of panic in his eyes. That terrible moment of truth, of recognition. He dropped the photo and stumbled inside, locking the door behind him, as if that could stop the unraveling. He doesn't know it yet, but locking the door was the final mistake. Because the house isn't trying to keep him in anymore. It's trying to keep me out. And locking me out means breaking the last piece of what kept it stable. The trade, one out, one in, but now both are trapped. And the house has begun to fracture under the contradiction. Rooms collide with each other. Stairs double back into themselves. Ceiling lights flicker blood, red even during the day. The smell of rot drips from the attic. And the walls bleed memory, actual blood seeping from old picture frames, pooling in corners where no one looks. It's beautiful. It's almost ready. He saw the thing last night. Not me, the original, the tall one. The first whisper in the static. It stood outside the window at 3:33 a.m. Long, still, faceless. He didn't move. Just sat on the couch, eyes wide, knuckles white. And when he blinked, it was inside the room. Still not moving, just closer. It never speaks. It just waits. Because it knows the mirror is nearly open again. It knows the imposter is failing. And when that last thread snaps, when the voice finally calls back through the glass in full, there will be no confusion. The house will choose. The town will see. And he'll be peeled from my skin like wax from flame. I'll step out. He'll step back. And the thing that started it all, it will watch. Because that's what it does. It remembers. And it waits. For the next voice to whisper from the static. For the next soul to mistake silence for peace. For the next fool to listen too long. Because that's all it takes. One night, one voice, one name spoken into a broken radio. And the house will begin again. He hasn't spoken in 2 days. Not to the house, not to himself, not even to the reflection that won't stop watching him. His lips stay shut, but his eyes, his stolen, borrowed eyes, never stop moving. Back and forth, twitching from corner to corner, tracking things that don't cast shadows. The rooms no longer make sense to him. The layout he memorized has turned against him, curling in on itself like a coiled serpent. There's a door in the hallway now that leads to a closet filled with watches, all ticking at different speeds. None of them match the time. None of them are his. He took one and put it on his wrist, just to feel something familiar. It stopped ticking the moment it touched his skin. He tried to sleep in the bathtub last night, convinced the walls of the bedroom were folding in while he wasn't looking. He lay there in the dark, curtain drawn, water running cold over his feet, clutching the same flashlight that had already flickered to death. And above him, on the ceiling, was a mirror he didn't put there. He saw it when the faucet light caught the reflection. A rectangle cut into the plaster, clean-edged, sharp. It wasn't there before, but it was now, and in it, he didn't see the bathroom. He saw me. I stood perfectly still, unblinking, a slight tilt of my head, watching him with the calm certainty of someone already home. He blinked, and the mirror went black. The next morning, he covered the ceiling with towels, hammered them in with nails. They didn't hold. Nothing does anymore. Because the house wants to see him. It's remembering better now. He's begun to call me the voice behind the glass. That's how he wrote it. Scratched into the drywall with his own fingernails, after waking from another dream, where the radio screamed his birth date over and over. He doesn't remember carving it, but I watched him do it. One hand gouging the wall, the other pressing into his cheek like he was trying to hold his face in place. His handwriting was shaky, barely legible, but the message was clear. The voice behind the glass is not done. He's right. I'm not. Because I'm closer than I've ever been. The mirrors don't just reflect anymore. They call. They hum with memory, distorted versions of a life he doesn't truly understand. I leave fragments for him now, not to torment him, to guide him back, to show him this skin was never his. The smell of my cologne in the closet he's never opened. A photo on the windowsill of my childhood self, one he never noticed until last night. It was under the glass, pressed flat. He picked it up and stared at it for hours, tracing the outline of my face, and I could feel him remembering. Not his memories, mine. That's when the glass began to crack, not from damage, from pressure, from truth. He tried to burn the hallway mirror this morning. Took it off the wall, dosed it in lighter fluid, set the match, and watched it burn in the backyard like it might scream. And it did, just not out loud. The fire bent the frame, blackened the edges, but the reflection never left. Even while the glass bubbled and twisted, it still held an image, not his face, mine. Standing inside a room filled with smoke, smiling. He ran until he collapsed beside the creek. And for the first time since he arrived, he wept. Not the angry, desperate sobbing of someone scared, but the silent, dry-eyed collapse of someone who knows the story is already written, and they are no longer the author. The house let him stay there until dusk. Then it called him back. He doesn't remember walking home, but I watched every step. The town is starting to talk louder now. The whispers are growing legs. A teenage girl saw her own face wink at her from a puddle, even though she wasn't blinking. A store clerk dropped an entire crate of compact mirrors when she saw someone else's smile inside each one. A pastor saw his mother in the reflection of the communion wine. His mother's been dead 12 years. None of them tell him what they're seeing, but they glance his way with tight lips, long stares, and just enough distance to say they know something's off. He feels it, and the worse it gets, the more he tries to perform being Daniel. He cleans the porch, waves too much, smiles too wide, and the house only gets quieter. Because the house no longer accepts the play. It's watching the actor, and it's waiting for the curtain call. 2 nights ago, he stood in front of the long mirror at the top of the stairs. The same mirror he boarded up weeks ago. The one he forgot was still behind the drywall. I showed it to him. I pushed light through the cracks just enough to tempt his eye. And when he peeled the board back and saw the glass, clean, clear, honest, he couldn't help himself. He stared for a long time, then asked, "Are you still in there?" I answered, but not with words. I tilted my head, smiled, and he screamed so hard he couldn't breathe. Because I hadn't moved at all. He had, and his reflection stayed behind. He doesn't sleep in beds anymore, doesn't speak unless spoken to, avoids glass, covers every polished surface with black fabric, walks barefoot so his footsteps make no sound, but none of it matters. The walls hum my name. The floorboards creak in my cadence. The ceiling fans spin to the rhythm of my heart. This house doesn't just know me anymore. It is me. And when the voice behind the glass steps out, it won't be through mirrors or radio signals or half-remembered dreams. It'll be through him. Because his body has been mine all along. He just borrowed it for a little while, but he's worn it too thin. The seams are showing. The glass is cracking. And very soon now, he'll be looking out through the other side, watching me live again, while he becomes the whisper, while he becomes the echo, while he becomes the static. He's fading now in the way an old photograph fades, not all at once, but slowly, edges first, color draining from the cheeks, the eyes becoming hollow outlines of something that once felt real. He still moves through the house, but there's a limp in his rhythm, a hesitation with every step, like his bones are remembering they never truly belonged to him. He barely speaks, barely eats, and when he breathes, it's shallow, as if the body knows it's housing a guest too long overdue to leave. And the house watches him with silent judgment, as if growing embarrassed to be seen holding onto something so counterfeit. The mirrors no longer hide their contempt. They don't reflect his image at all now, not even a warped version. He stands before them and sees nothing, no face, no eyes, just the outline of a man refused by his own lie. It rattles him. He claws at his face sometimes, scratching at his cheeks and jawline like he's trying to peel me off of him. But I'm not on him. I'm underneath. He isn't wearing me. He is me, badly, a rough sketch, a noise pretending to be a name, and now even the echo is wearing thin. Last night, I came closer than I ever have. He was standing in the hallway, holding a flashlight that flickered in and out like it was trying to decide whether to stay or flee. Every door along the hall was open, and every open door revealed the same room, my childhood bedroom. Pale green walls, dust in the corners, the smell of paper and wood glue and warm fabric, over and over. He turned in circles, door to door, each one leading back to the same origin point. He tried to scream. Nothing came out, because the voice doesn't belong to him anymore. That's what they don't understand. When you steal a name, you borrow the soul attached to it. But souls remember the sound of their own truth, and when it's spoken enough, when it reverberates through floorboards and windows and whispered memories, it finds its way home. I've spoken my name so many times now that it's begun to echo from other mouths. The neighbors talk more openly now. Mrs. Doran, quiet, polite, once a church choir lead, stopped me see him on the sidewalk, her arms folded, eyes unblinking. "You've changed," she said. He tried to smile. "Haven't we all?" She didn't blink. "No," she said, "you don't blink." He laughed, a hollow, metallic sound. She didn't. And now she leaves her lights on through the night. Tapes black cloth over her windows. Carries a silver hand mirror everywhere she goes. Not to see herself, but to make sure she's still in there. Because Silver Pine is no longer a town. It's a threshold, and the people inside it. They're beginning to feel like reflections themselves. Dim copies. Lives that might not be the originals anymore. The sheriff, Dalton, made a second visit. He didn't bring backup, didn't park his cruiser out front. He walked. Alone. He stood at the edge of the porch, just out of reach of the overhang, staring at the warped glass of the front window. He never knocked, never looked directly at the door, just stared into the pane like it might answer his unspoken question. After several minutes, he took a notepad from his coat and pressed it against the window. Written in thick, dark ink, "You're not Daniel." But he's still here. He folded the paper in half, placed it under a loose board, and walked away without a word. He knows. He's always known. But he's not trying to stop me. He's just waiting to see which version of me walks out in the end. And so am I. He saw the real me again last night. In the floor. The hardwood split open without a sound, and a reflection shone from underneath the crawl space. Not water, not glass. Just a surface so still, so impossibly perfect, that it showed me as I should be. Whole, alive, unafraid. He dropped to his knees, crawled forward, reached out with shaking hands. I didn't move. He whispered, "Let me stay." I didn't answer. He screamed, "I gave up everything." But that's the lie that broke him. He didn't give anything. He took. He stepped through a door he didn't understand, wore a name that didn't belong to him, and thought that silence would never speak back. But silence has memory, and I am the memory, and the silence has turned loud. Now the house sings. Not songs, not music, but voices, my mother's lullaby, my father's cough from the den, my uncle's voice on the old cassette tapes we used to play every Christmas. He hears them all, echoing from behind the walls, through the vents, beneath the floorboards, and each one speaks a piece of me back into existence, not in full, but piece by piece, memory by memory, voice by voice. And when I'm whole again, when the last stolen syllable is returned, I will step through. Not into him. I don't want the shell anymore. I want the space, the town, the house, the mirrors, the name, everything he took, everything he defiled. He will be left in the dark, in the reflection, in the thing that used to show him belonging. He'll scream, he'll beg, but he won't be seen. Because soon, I'll be the one they remember when they say Daniel. And he'll be the thing that flickers when the static comes back on, the echo that wears my name, but never speaks it again. The house doesn't breathe like it used to. It hums. Low, constant. Like a throat clearing in preparation for a sentence that's taken 17 nights to form. The sound isn't mechanical. It isn't natural. It's intentional. A vibration beneath the bones of the place. A throatless choir murmuring from the corners of every room. The air buzzes with tension now, like a taut wire just before it snaps. And in that tension, the house begins to speak. Not in words, but in feelings. Heavy ones. The kind that crush the lungs, thicken the blood, shame, remorse, reversal. The kind of emotions that only come after you realize the thing you killed is still watching you. He spends most of his days by the window now, hands trembling as he watches the world outside flicker. The trees move wrong, not with the wind, but around it, as if they're dodging something unseen that passes between their branches. Cars pass the house less frequently, and when they do, their radios crackle to life unprompted, voices slurring in broken whispers. Some drivers speed away, others stall in place, windows fogging up in the dead heat of summer. He doesn't know what they hear, but I do, because I'm saying his name. Over and over, burning it into the air until it snaps. He tried writing it down yesterday. Not my name, his, or what he thinks is his. Sat at the kitchen table with shaking hands, gripping a dull pencil and scribbling Daniel again and again. Every time, the handwriting grew less familiar, each letter warped. The D curled wrong, the A tilted like it was afraid of standing upright. By the 10th repetition, he stopped, stared at the page, and realized the last word he wrote wasn't Daniel at all. It was Donner. He tore it up, breathing hard. But the letters stayed on the table, even after the paper was gone. even after he scraped the wood with a knife until his hands bled. Because the house has a better memory than he does. And now it's telling the truth. Down in the basement, he found a door where there shouldn't be one. Same wood. Same handle. But something about it felt older. Not in a way that made it fragile, but in a way that made it permanent. As if it had been waiting to be discovered, not built. It pulsed when he touched it, warm like flesh. He put his ear against it, listened. He heard someone breathing, not close, not distant. Underneath. He whispered, "Who's there?" And the voice whispered back, "You." He hasn't gone near that door since. He won't, but he will, because the door is patient, and so am I. At night, he dreams of radios. Old ones, dusty and oversized, set in corners of rooms that don't exist anymore. They play familiar sounds. His mother's voice humming a song that never had a melody, his brother crying out from the woods behind the school, the thud of a shovel hitting wet earth, and always, beneath the noise, my voice, not angry, not mocking, just steady, reclaiming syllables. One at a time, he tries to wake. But there's no longer a line between the dream and the waking world. He sits up in bed, drenched in sweat, and finds the static still playing. Not from a speaker, from the walls, from the blood in his ears, from the ceiling fan spinning even when the power's off. And it speaks only one thing: you were never Daniel. The neighbors have stopped pretending. No more fake waves. No more nervous glances and half-hearted smiles. Now they stare. Some leave offerings on the sidewalk out front, candles, Polaroids, cassette tapes in battered cases. Things that don't make sense unless you've heard the story. A little girl left a toy radio that only plays the sound of wind. An old man dropped off a page torn from a Bible, soaked in something that smells like lake water. A teenager spray painted a message across the street last night in giant red letters: "Give him back." No one painted over it, and no one asked who him was. Because they know. They know the one walking in Daniel's shape is just a placeholder, a borrowed outline, a draft. And the original, he's been whispering through the wires for weeks now. Getting closer, stronger, more real. This morning, the sky above the house changed. Not the weather, the color. It's a gray that doesn't exist on any painter's palette. A shade that eats at the blue, dulls the sun, makes every other house on the street look like a photograph fading too fast. Birds don't land on the roof anymore. Insects avoid the siding. The wind won't blow across the yard, because the house is rejecting the world around it. It's building something new, something fit for me and him. He won't survive the transition, because every time he breathes now, he hears my name catch in his throat like smoke. Every time he blinks, his reflection takes longer to return. And every time he speaks, he starts to sound like me, not in cadence, not in tone, but in conviction. The way he used to say my name like it was his. Now he says it like a prayer, and the static, it listens, it answers. Because I've bled my voice into every frequency. I've stitched myself into the hum of every faulty light bulb, every crooked radio dial, every pause between words that once belonged to me. The house remembers. The town remembers. And soon he will too. Because names carry weight, and mine is about to crush him. The house has stopped pretending. It no longer creaks or groans like old wood in weather. It growls. Deep, patient, knowing. The sound doesn't come from one place anymore. It travels, echoing through vents that didn't exist yesterday, vibrating from beneath the floorboards, behind the pipes, inside the plaster. The walls are thick with memory, and they are starting to speak it. Not in voices or words, but in feelings. The air is heavier now. Walking through it feels like moving underwater, except the pressure isn't from outside. It's coming from within, from the house itself. It has lungs now. It has a heartbeat. It has eyes. He knows this. Of course he does. He feels it every time he touches something he used to trust. The banister feels warm. The doorknobs are slick like skin. The light switches twitch when he brushes them, like they're alive and waiting. He tried wearing gloves. Then he tried not touching anything at all. But the house didn't care. It wrapped around him anyway. Now every room smells like him, sweats like him, thinks like him. But the more the house becomes him, the less he is anything at all. Because he's not just being erased, he's being replaced. He talks to me now. Not out loud, he's past that. He whispers under his breath when he thinks he's alone, like a man trying to bargain with a ghost. I hear every word. He calls me by the name he stole, says it like an apology and a curse in the same breath. Sometimes he tells me he's sorry, that he didn't know what it would cost, that the radio was just a trick, a broken voice in the middle of a lonely night, and all he wanted was something to answer him. But we both know that's a lie. He did know. He just didn't think I'd follow him back. And now I'm not just following, I'm here. Not entirely, yet, but enough. Enough for the mirrors to shudder when he walks by. Enough for strangers on the street to flinch when they see his reflection in a car window. Enough for the lights to flicker when he speaks my name. The house feels me growing inside its walls, and it's helping. Yesterday, he found a new door. That's how it always starts. He was walking through the upstairs hall when he noticed the floor had changed beneath his feet. Just a few planks, but enough. They were darker than the rest, smoother, almost polished, and they creaked in the wrong pitch. He stopped, looked left, and there it was, a door that had never been there. Smaller than the others, child-sized, painted with a crooked blue star in the center. He didn't open it, but the knob turned on its own. He ran. Didn't stop until he reached the kitchen, breath shallow, chest heaving like he'd been holding it for a year. The refrigerator was gone. The table was gone. The walls were narrower, and there was a mirror where the oven should be. In it me, sitting at the table, smiling, eating something out of a bowl that looked suspiciously like his teeth. He dropped to his knees and screamed, but no sound came out, just static. The town doesn't ask questions anymore. They watch. Some from behind curtains, some through broken glass, some through the viewfinders of old cameras that haven't worked in decades. The local radio station plays nothing, now but a single, repeating tone. Low, steady, and layered under it, if you listen close enough, is a single line, "Give back the voice." No one changes the station, not even the sheriff. He just walks past the house every morning, leaves a fresh photo on the porch, old shots of me, of what I used to look like before he took me. Today, the photo had writing on the back. It said, "He's not just losing himself. He's giving you everything." And he is. He doesn't sleep anymore. When he closes his eyes, he finds himself beneath the house, not the basement, deeper. Somewhere older, a place made of dirt and teeth and rusted wires that hum with old voices. He walks barefoot down endless tunnels, and every time he hears a voice behind him, he turns around, only to find a mirror hanging from a nail driven into the earth. Each mirror shows me, closer, fuller, more complete, until finally, in the last mirror, we look identical. But only I blink, only I smile, only I step forward. And when he wakes, his mouth tastes like soil. His fingertips are bloody, and there's dirt in his teeth. He tried writing a letter today. To no one. To someone. To me. He wrote it on the back of an old photo, scratched the words in with a bent nail. It said, "I remember what I took. I remember the static. I remember you. Please, just take the house. Leave me out of it." But the house didn't take him in. He built it. With every lie. With every stolen breath. With every time he said Daniel like it was his. Now the house doesn't want to throw him out. It wants to make him part of the walls, of the foundation, where the voice will echo forever, where the static never fades, where the real me can finally live again. Because this place never needed two of us, and only one of us was ever real. He woke up gasping. Not from a dream, but from the feeling that someone else had been using his lungs while he slept. His chest ached like it had been worked too hard, like it wasn't built for him anymore. The air tasted stale, full of dust and something bitter, like burned fabric or old breath left in a sealed room for too long. He stumbled to the sink and splashed water on his face, but the mirror didn't fog. The reflection didn't match. It blinked before he did. It moved its hand a second too late, and then it smiled, only in the glass. That's how every day begins now. The house no longer just surrounds him. It breathes through him. The walls move in time with his heartbeat. The floor vibrates when he speaks, and like it's repeating his words a split second later in a deeper, lower voice. The radio in the living room hasn't turned on in days, but he still hears it playing from somewhere beneath the floorboards. Not music, not voices, just that endless static, the kind that fills your skull and rattles loose every name you've ever known. Especially mine, especially his. He doesn't speak aloud anymore. When he tries, the words echo too long, too loud, and sometimes come back in a voice that's not his own. Last week he tried to call the sheriff. He picked up the landline, dialed, and waited. When the voice answered, it said, "We already took the body." Then laughed, and the laugh was identical to his. He smashed the phone against the wall. The cord slithered away like a snake. Curling behind the radiator, he hasn't tried to call again, because who would answer now? Who would believe him? When even he can't tell what's real anymore. The mirror in the upstairs hallway has grown larger. It's not physically bigger. The frame hasn't changed, but it reflects more of the house than it should. He stood in front of it yesterday and saw the entire first floor in the glass, as if it were folding all the rooms into one view. Even the basement. Even the new door. He watched his own body standing still in the hallway, while another version of him walked through the basement in the reflection, holding a radio with wires wrapped around his throat. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, he was on the basement stairs, and his hands were bleeding. He doesn't remember how he got there, or what he was holding. But the blood didn't stop for hours, and none of it matched his blood type. The townspeople don't come near the house now. Not even the sheriff. He leaves photos at the edge of the driveway, wrapped in plastic and tied with twine. Each one shows a little more of what he used to be. What I used to be. A birthday photo. A school portrait. A snapshot of me fishing with my dad in a lake that doesn't exist on any map anymore. On the back of the most recent one. He doesn't remember, but the house does. He burned it without reading it twice. And still, the image was back the next morning, taped to the inside of his bathroom mirror. The fire doesn't work here anymore. Not against memory. Not against truth. Every night at 3:03 a.m., the house clicks. Just once. A single, sharp, intentional sound, like a gear turning into place. That's the warning. 30 seconds later, the mirrors begin to fog, even when there's no steam. Then the glass whispers, sometimes my name, sometimes his. Sometimes the sound of both names colliding into each other, like an accident too loud to rewind. And then he sees the hallway fill with smoke. Not fire smoke, not fog, something older. Something remembering. He doesn't go near it anymore. But he doesn't run either. Because now he expects it. Because now it's part of him. His skin has started to flake in small, circular patches, always in the same places behind the ears, under the eyes, at the corners of his mouth. At first it looked like a rash. Then it looked like something peeling away, a layer of him. A costume unraveling at the seams. Beneath it, something pale, not raw, not bloody. Just smooth, featureless. Like someone who hasn't been finished yet. Like the shape of a person the house is trying to remember. Because maybe that's all he ever was. Not an intruder. Not a thief. Just an echo that said my name too many times in the dark, and now he's being corrected. Not punished. Not destroyed. Absorbed. The house isn't falling apart. It's becoming perfect. Every creaking board has fallen silent. Every crooked picture has straightened. Every light bulb now glows with that soft yellow hue that existed only in my memory. Even the wallpaper, torn and mold-stained for years, has repaired itself overnight, like it's been restored to how it looked when I was alive, when I was home. Because the house doesn't just remember me, it remembers how it felt when I lived here. And now, through him, it's bringing me back, one breath at a time, one memory at a time, one replacement at a time. Last night, he finally said it, not in fear, not in apology, but in surrender. He looked into the mirror, the big one, the one that's grown too wide, and whispered, "Daniel, you can have it back." And the house sighed, not from the vents, from the walls themselves. And I felt something shift, inside the glass, inside him. Because that's all I was waiting for, not vengeance, not forgiveness, just the truth. And once the truth is spoken aloud, the trade is almost complete, almost. Because one last thing remains. He must remember what he did, and when he does, when the truth hits him so hard it cracks the inside of his skull, then I'll walk through the door. Then the static will stop, and only my voice will be left. He woke up without a heartbeat. At first, he thought it was a nightmare, a sleep paralysis hallucination, the kind that clings to the ribs even after you've thrown yourself upright and drenched the sheets with sweat. But when he pressed his fingers to his throat, his wrist, his chest, nothing, no pulse, just silence beneath the skin. And yet he stood, he breathed, he moved. The body didn't protest. The body obeyed. It just didn't beat. As if the house had decided that rhythm was mine now, and his part in the symphony was finished. He panicked, of course, punched the walls until his knuckles split, dug his nails into the hollow place where breath and blood were supposed to meet. But the pain didn't rise like it should. It dulled instantly, absorbed by the house, swallowed into the framework like nourishment. Every wound he gave himself just fed it, and so he stopped trying, stopped fighting, sat in the middle of the hallway like a puppet that had figured out the strings were under the floor, not above. Outside, the wind didn't blow. Not even the trees moved. The world was quiet, too quiet, like it was listening. The bathroom mirror has cracked, not broken, fractured. A perfect spiderweb line, starting from the center and stretching outward in impossible symmetry, like a fingerprint made of glass. And in that split pattern, the reflection doesn't line up anymore. He looks into it and sees a version of himself that flickers. Sometimes smiling, sometimes crying, sometimes screaming, but no sound. And worst of all, sometimes not there at all, just the hallway behind him. Empty, still, waiting. He put tape over the mirror that night. Black tape, thick, wrapping it like a wound. But in the morning, the tape was peeled back. Not torn, cleanly removed, as if someone had done it carefully, methodically, like a surgeon peeling gauze from a healing cut. In the center of the mirror, someone had written 2 words in something too dark to be ink. "Remember me." He didn't write it, but his fingerprints were on the glass. The voices are louder now. Not whispers, not background static. They speak in full sentences, all in different versions of his own voice. Some younger, some rasped with age, some too close to the voice he heard once in a recording that made his ears bleed. They argue. They plead. Some cry. Some laugh. They speak from vents, from under the floor, from inside the pillows when he presses his head down too hard. They speak only one thing: you knew. You knew what you were doing. He didn't reply at first, but now he walks from room to room yelling back, I swear I didn't know what would happen!" But he's not answering them. He's answering me. And I already know the truth, because he did know. Maybe not all of it. Not the way the wires would twist through his spine, or how the house would start breathing his memories back into dust. But he knew enough. He knew the radio was broken. He knew the voice he heard wasn't his. And he chose it anyway. He chose me. And now, he doesn't get to choose again. Something's growing in the attic. He hasn't been up there in weeks. But the door creaks open on its own every night now. At the same time, 3:33 a.m., the same hour he first heard the voice. The same minute the static changed from noise to message. He hears it shifting above him, heavy, deliberate, scraping against the beams like something trying to stretch its way out of a too small skin. Last night, he almost climbed the ladder. He got as far as the 4th rung. Then he heard it a single breath, his own, exhaling from just above the hatch. Not a wind, not an echo, a breath, identical, and it said, "Almost ready." He hasn't gone near it since. But the air in the house smells like insulation and rot and birth, and the ceiling creaks in time with a heartbeat that isn't his. His memories are starting to misalign. He swears he was born in Ohio. The house shows him a birth certificate from Silverpine. He insists his mother was left-handed. A photograph shows her holding a pen in her right. He tells himself the radio was never part of it, that he was drawn to the house for a fresh start, a new life after tragedy. But the cassette tape says otherwise. The one that appeared in his mailbox this morning. No envelope, no label, just the tape and a player left beside the front door like a gift. He played it, and the voice on the tape was his own. Younger, tired, but clear. "I know what I'm doing. Just one night. If the voice answers, I'll take it. I don't care who it belongs to." Then static, then laughter, then me, quietly, saying thank you. He ran after that, bolted out the door barefoot, shirtless, blood still dried beneath his fingernails, down the street, through the woods, to the creek, where he first heard the static all those months ago, hissing from the rusted radio he found buried in the mud. He dug at the spot, ripped up earth with his hands, crying, panting, swearing he could bury it all back where it started. But the radio wasn't there, just a mirror, small, square, cracked in one corner, and in it, me wearing his body better than he ever did, waving, smiling, mouthing the words, "You're not lost. You're home." He ran until his legs gave out, crawled until the dirt filled his mouth, and when he looked up, the house was in front of him again. But this time, the porch light was already on. It was waiting, for him, or for me. At this point, we're not so different anymore. Tonight is the last night. He feels it. The air is too still. The mirrors are too quiet. The static is gone. Not faded, waiting. Because tonight, the house stops breathing through him, and starts breathing as me. He's not dead. Not yet. But the blood that moves through him now, it doesn't echo anymore. It remembers. And when blood remembers, it starts calling the real name. Mine. He counted every second between the last 2 beats of his heart last night. The silence between them stretched far too long, like the world paused to listen, and when the next beat finally came, it didn't sound like his. It was too sharp, too heavy, like a knock on wood from the inside of a coffin. That's what he's become now. Something hollow, something occupied. And whatever's tapping from within him, it's not asking to be let out. It's knocking to say it's already in. The floorboards know it. They creak only when he isn't moving, like they're tracking something that doesn't need feet to walk. The walls don't just watch him. They lean closer. You can't measure it, not with a ruler, not with tape, but he feels it. Every morning the hallway is an inch narrower. The ceiling, just a touch lower. The stairs groan now even before his weight finds them, like the house is anticipating his next mistake. Or maybe it's testing him, waiting to see if he finally breaks completely and lets go. He's so close to surrender. And I'm so close to waking up. He tried speaking to it again today. The static, the hum, the presence in the house that doesn't answer with words, but with rearranged furniture, with blinking lights, with reflections that smile when he cries. He walked from room to room, whispering, "What do you want?" over and over again like a prayer gone wrong. At first, silence. Then the air changed. He didn't hear anything, but he felt it. A shift, a weight. And then the voices came. Not from the radio this time, not from the mirrors. from inside the walls, not just in the walls, of the walls. The drywall murmured his name. The crown molding hissed the words, not yours. And the vents giggled, childlike, familiar mine. He fell to his knees, clutching his ears, begging it to stop. But there's no off switch for truth. Once the house starts speaking, it doesn't quiet down. It builds. He found another note under his pillow last night. He doesn't know how it got there. The room had been locked, windows nailed shut, lights on all night. And yet there it was, folded 3 times, edges wet with sweat. No handwriting, just words burned into the paper like someone pressed them in with fire. You borrowed my skin. Now give it back. He didn't scream this time. He just lay there, holding the note against his chest, eyes wide, whispering, I don't know how. But he does. He always did. He just didn't want to. He still doesn't. Because to give it back means remembering everything, and what he did to take it in the first place. The attic door is wide open now. Every night, it opens a little farther, creaks a little longer. Something moves up there, not pacing, not crawling, shifting, like a sack of wet bones being stirred. He hasn't climbed the ladder yet, but the smell wafting down is getting stronger. Damp earth, copper, sweat that doesn't belong to him. And something else, something too clean, too bright, formaldehyde and disinfectant. Like a funeral home that hasn't had guests in years. He dreams of it now, of being in that attic, not as himself, but as me. Standing at the edge of the hatch, looking down, watching him from above like a spider, deciding which part of the web to pluck first. And when I reach down for him, he doesn't run. He lifts his arms and waits. Because deep down, in the part of his soul that still flickers like a dying bulb, he knows this ends only one way. He doesn't walk out of this house. I do. He discovered a photograph this morning tucked behind a loose brick in the chimney. Old, faded, but unmistakable. My face. My real face. I'm maybe 8 years old, standing in front of this very house, holding a toy radio, my parents flanking me, both half smiling. He stared at it for a long time, then flipped it over. In childlike handwriting it read Daniel's last birthday, 1993, before the voice took him. His hands shook so hard he dropped it into the ashes. He let it burn. But the image stayed in his head, clearer than any memory he has of his own childhood. Because those aren't his memories anymore. They never were. The neighbors have all gone silent. No lights in their windows. No laughter from their yards. Even the air around the house feels abandoned, like the world's pulled back just enough to let what's happening here finish without interference. Only Sheriff Dalton remains. He came to the edge of the property line today. Didn't cross it. Just stood there in his worn boots, hands in his coat pockets, eyes unreadable. He called out, "You know who you are yet?" The man inside the house didn't answer. Dalton waited, then said, "Don't wait too long. You give something enough time to grow in the dark, you'll forget it was ever a seed." He left without another word, and the air didn't shift until he was long gone. Tonight, the radio came back on. No one touched it. The power had been out for days. But it lit up, dial glowing, speaker humming, right as the sky outside turned the color of bruised bone. It didn't play music, just a voice. My voice. Calm, even, clear. You don't have to die. You just have to remember. And then silence. No static, just the weight of what was said. He sat there for hours, staring at the speaker, waiting for more. But nothing came. Not yet. Because I'm close now. Close enough that I don't need to talk through machines anymore. Soon, I'll speak through him. And when I do, it won't be as an echo. It'll be as Daniel. Because the hollow between heartbeats isn't just silence. It's a door. And mine is finally about to open. The house greeted the morning with silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, dangerous kind, like the last breath before a scream. He didn't wake so much as he arrived. Eyes already open, body already sitting up, hands gripping the edge of the bed, as though he'd been holding himself still for hours. He didn't remember sleeping. He didn't remember closing his eyes. But his pillow was damp with sweat, and his fingernails were crusted with dirt again. Despite having cleaned them the night before, there was a taste in his mouth, metallic and familiar. Not blood, battery acid. Like the taste you get when you press your ear too close to a speaker that's about to blow. And when he opened his mouth to call out, it wasn't his voice that came out. It was mine. He stumbled to the bathroom, heart pounding despite the silence inside his chest. No pulse, no echo. But he felt the thudding anyway, like phantom pain in a limb that didn't belong to him anymore. He turned on the light. The bulb flickered twice and then steadied, casting the mirror in a soft, yellow glow. For a moment, the reflection was his. But only for a moment. Then it blinked without him, smiled without his permission, and spoke. My voice. You're wearing me like skin, but you forgot the bones. He backed away, breath ragged, but the mirror kept speaking. I was never dead. You just changed the channel. And then the reflection screamed, not in fear, but in fury. A long, guttural shriek that cracked the glass without touching it. The real him didn't make a sound. He couldn't. His vocal cords were no longer his own. They'd been rewired. The attic has begun dripping. A thick, clear fluid, cold and sweet smelling, seeps through the boards above his bedroom, leaving stains like fingerprints on the ceiling. It pools slowly, drop by drop, in a perfect circle above his bed. He tried putting a bucket beneath it, but in the morning, the bucket was gone, and in its place stood a pair of boots, his boots, only 2 sizes too small, and inside them, teeth, not loose, not scattered, still in the shape of a smile. He didn't touch them. He didn't need to. Because he recognized the feeling in his jaw, the way his own teeth no longer fit quite right. Like they belonged to someone else. Like he'd borrowed them. And now the body wanted them back. Outside, the world has slowed. Leaves on the trees no longer fall. They hang mid-air, suspended in a stillness that vibrates just beneath the surface, like the world is paused on a single frame of film. Birds don't fly. They hover. The sky doesn't shift. It waits. Even time has begun to falter inside the house. Clocks spin without order. His wristwatch counts backward in pulses instead of seconds. He'll wake up at dusk and find the morning sun still bleeding through the windows like nothing happened. And every time he tries to measure it, write it down, count the seconds, track the hours, the numbers disappear from the page. Only one thing keeps time now. The radio. Every morning at 4:17 a.m., it plays a single click, like a metronome acknowledging the beat of something deeper, something underground, something beating without a heart. He spoke to the reflection again today. Not the one in the bathroom. It stopped showing him entirely. This time it was in the kitchen window, the glass above the sink, smeared with condensation from nowhere. He approached it slowly, cautiously, not because he was afraid of seeing himself, but because he was afraid of what might not be there. But I was there, and this time I was closer. I had eyes again. Not quite the right shade yet, but almost. And I was moving with him, in perfect unison, until he spoke. Then I stopped, and I said, "You borrowed my voice. You took it in the static. You thought no one would hear." He said nothing. But the reflection stepped forward, and it was still in the glass. That's when he finally broke. He smashed the window with a frying pan, sent shards scattering across the sink, cutting his fingers, his palms, his wrists. He bled freely, but the blood wasn't red. It was gray, like dust mixed with water, and it didn't stop flowing. It just whispered as it slid down his arms. He's not sleeping anymore. Not because of nightmares. Those have stopped. It's the quiet that terrifies him now. The silence has weight. It presses into him like a second skin. A soundless scream that wraps around his lungs and waits for him to exhale something wrong. And he always does. He mutters names in his sleep. Not just mine, others. Names of people no one in Silverpine remembers. Names carved into walls behind layers of wallpaper. Names etched beneath paint in the basement. Names that don't belong in this century. Names that were buried, not just forgotten. And when he says them, the house hums. Low, satisfied, like it's digesting a secret meal. Because every name he speaks aloud returns something lost. And every memory returned is one step closer to me. Tonight, he found the radio in a new place. His bedroom. It had been buried under his mattress. No cord, no dial, just a speaker and a red button. He stared at it for an hour. Finally, he pressed it. And my voice said, "You said the name out loud. You turned the dial when no one else would. You gave the signal. This isn't possession." Pause. It's payment. He threw the radio against the wall. It didn't break. It just laughed. Not loudly, softly. Like the first chuckle you make when you realize you've already lost. His hands don't match anymore. One is his, collused, pale, shaking. The other, smoother, younger, like a hand borrowed from a better life. One finger slightly crooked, a scar near the wrist. The same scar I had when I fell off the porch steps as a kid and landed on the broken garden gnome. He touched it. It tingled not from nerves, from recognition. The body is piecing itself back together. Mine, piece by piece, joint by joint, breath by breath. Until one morning soon, he'll wake up, and the face in the mirror will be mine, and the mouth he opens will speak my voice. And when he tries to scream, he'll finally understand. He gave it away the moment he listened. The static wasn't calling out to him. It was inviting me back. The sun rose in reverse this morning. He watched it from the hallway window, a faint glow crawling backwards along the horizon, as if time had caught its own mistake and was trying to rewind without being noticed. But he noticed. He notices everything now. That's what the house does when you're this far in. It sharpens your senses, makes you aware of the seams in reality, until even light seems suspicious. The colors outside the house don't match anymore. The sky's shade is slightly wrong, too deep around the edges. The grass is too flat, like it's been painted on with old memory. And the wind doesn't rustle, it hisses, like static. He doesn't trust the windows. Not because they show something unfamiliar, but because lately, they've started responding. Last night, he pressed his hand to the glass and felt warmth press back, not heat, but skin. He jerked away, and the handprint stayed, larger than his, warped. Familiar. It didn't fade until sunrise. Except he doesn't think that was sunrise at all. The mirrors have become portals of regret. He's stopped using them, covered them in sheets, turned them toward the walls. But the reflections keep appearing, on spoons, on the backs of his eyes when he blinks too long, in puddles where there hasn't been rain. He saw me again this morning. Not in one mirror, but in 4 all across the hallway, as if I'd been waiting in each one for him to walk by. He stopped, looked, and I stayed. I didn't move this time, didn't blink, didn't mimic him. Just stood there, smiling like I knew the ending of a story he hadn't even realized had started. He said, "Why are you doing this?" The mirrors answered together. In a chorus that made the walls shake, "You asked us to." He ran, but the reflection stayed behind, and when he looked again, he wasn't in it anymore. He hears breathing in the walls at night, deep, slow, human breathing, not in rhythm with his own, but tracking it, responding to it, like something learning how to copy him from the inside out. The vents wheeze, the floor pulses, and in the silence between sounds, he swears he hears bones settling into new shapes. Once, while walking past the coat closet, he paused, listened, and he heard footsteps inside. One slow step forward, then a voice, mine, but not saying anything, just breathing. And then, faintly whispering the words, "We're almost even." The radio has grown teeth, not literal ones, not yet, but yesterday he found it had bitten him. There was a perfect crescent shape on his forearm after he tried to move it. He didn't feel it at first, only noticed when he reached for the fridge and saw the blood. No pain, just a dull ache, like the wound wasn't fresh. like it had been remembered, not inflicted. He threw the radio into the basement. It came back that night. Perched neatly on the kitchen counter, speaker facing the hallway, still silent, still smiling. The photographs have changed again. The ones the sheriff left. The ones buried in drawers and cupboards. He found them rearranged on the living room wall in a grid. 60 in total. All of them showing him. Not how he is now, but how he looked a week ago. Before the teeth in the mirror. Before the voice in his throat. Before he knew what Daniel really meant. And beneath each photo, a word. Written in red ink. Or blood. He can't tell anymore. Each word is a piece of a sentence. He started reading them aloud, left to right. By the time he reached the final row, his lips were trembling. The full message read, "This is the body you borrowed. This is the face you wore. This is the cost." He burned the photos. They reappeared the next morning, unmoved. Now they're watching him. He swears the expressions change when he's not looking. And the eyes follow him down the hall. There's a door in the guest bedroom now. He's sure it wasn't there before. It's too narrow to be practical. Too tall to be right. And it's humming, not sound, but vibration. Like a throat clearing before a confession. He doesn't want to open it, but it wants him. Every hour, the knob turns slightly on its own, as if being turned from the other side, inviting him in. He barricaded it with furniture. The furniture moved. Last night, he heard knocking from the other side. 3 knocks. Pause. Then 1. Then the same pattern again. He couldn't ignore it. It matched the tapping pattern he used as a child when hiding from thunderstorms in the basement of the foster home. Only one other person knew that rhythm. Me. The attic has stopped making noise. That's what scares him most. For weeks, it groaned and scraped and muttered above his head. But now, nothing. Complete silence. He climbed the ladder for the first time today, against every instinct in his body, opened the hatch slowly, and found a cradle. Wooden. Old. Rocking gently even though there was no breeze. Inside, a cassette tape. Labeled in handwriting he hadn't seen in years. His own. The label said first words. He hasn't played it, not yet. He doesn't need to. Because every time he touches it, his mouth whispers words he doesn't choose. And they're in my voice. He's almost gone now. Not dead, not erased, but replaced. Bit by bit, the house has stripped away the borrowed pieces and put mine back in their place. The voice, the breath, the gestures, the scar on the wrist, even the way he stands. There's one thing left, just one. The memory. The exact moment he tuned the radio that first night. The click of the dial. The hum in the air. The voice that answered back, not with a threat, not with a demand, but with a question. Are you lonely enough to become someone else? And he said yes. Of course he did. That's the part he's been avoiding. The part he won't be able to forget. Because once he remembers it, fully, clearly, his body won't belong to him anymore. And the reflection that stayed behind. It will step out, and I'll be home. He can't remember his last name anymore. He tried to say it this morning, just to himself in the mirror, but his lips wouldn't shape the sounds. His tongue caught in his mouth like it was choking on a name that no longer fit. It wasn't just forgotten. It had been removed. Cleanly, surgically, like someone had gone into the meat of his mind and carved away the part that answered to anything other than Daniel. And the worst part is, it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like relief. Like letting go of something too heavy. Too wrong. Too borrowed. He stood there for nearly 20 minutes, jaw slack, hands braced against the sink. The reflection didn't match again. It smiled once when he didn't. Then it whispered, not with a mouth, but inside his skull. You're almost ready. You're almost clean. Then the mirror fogged from the inside out. Even though the room was cold, he didn't wipe it away. He didn't need to. Because he saw something behind the glass. A hallway. Familiar. Not in this house, but from before, from me. Every room feels like a different year now. The dining room smells like 1995, roast beef and lemon cleaner, and a candle that burned out during a blackout one Christmas Eve. The living room has the ache of 2002 in its walls, that strange stillness of a home waiting for a voice that never comes back. The basement is older, untouched by calendar years, humming with the weight of centuries like a buried cathedral. He walked through them yesterday, touching the doorknobs with the back of his hand, not opening anything, just listening, and what he heard weren't sounds, they were memories. Not his. Mine, layered into the walls like insulation, soaked into the floor like spilled water. It wasn't just a haunting, it was a reclamation, and he was walking through the house like a ghost who hadn't realized he'd died yet. And maybe that's exactly what he is. The radio hasn't spoken in days, but it's still on, still warm to the touch, as if something inside it has a heartbeat of its own. He pressed his ear to the speaker last night and didn't hear static. He heard breathing, shallow, even, like someone sleeping too close to the microphone. He whispered into it, "Are you still there?" And the breathing paused, just for a moment, then resumed, slightly closer. He left the room, heart racing, but the sound followed, not through the walls, through him. His ears rang. His chest felt heavy. He could feel the breath in his own lungs, drawn not for oxygen but for memory, like something was using his ribs as a bellows. And for the first time, he wondered, what if he's not the one haunting the house? What if the house is wearing him like a coat? The cradle in the attic has begun rocking on its own. No sound, no creak, just slow, deliberate motion. He hasn't gone back up since the cassette appeared, but he hears it from the floor below, the rhythmic back and forth of something soothing itself to sleep, or waking up. He dreams about it now, but not as himself. In the dreams he's small again, 8, maybe 9, standing beside the cradle in a room full of mirrors, and in every reflection, he sees the same thing, me, curled inside it, smiling with a mouth that's too wide, too knowing. And I say to him, gently, always gently, you were just keeping the bed warm. It's my turn now. Today, he found the house had shifted again. Not drastically, just enough. The hallway is longer. The bedroom window looks out onto a backyard that no longer exists. The doors are slightly taller, the doorknobs colder, the floorboards quieter than they've ever been. But the quiet isn't peaceful. It's expectant. The kind of hush that comes right before a name is called out loud for the last time. And the house feels full now. Not cluttered, not chaotic, complete, like the final piece is almost in place, and he knows what it is. It's not a relic, not a tape, not an item buried in the backyard. It's a memory. The memory, the first night, the static, the wish, the voice that answered. He's been hiding from it for so long, burying it under justifications and fear and half-remembered dreams. But it's coming back now. In pieces, in smells, in echoes. And when it returns completely, he knows it won't just clarify what happened. It will finalize it. The sheriff came again, briefly, just long enough to stand at the edge of the porch and shout, "You're on the last page, son. Hope you're ready to turn it." Then he dropped something in the mailbox and left without looking back. He didn't open it for hours. When he did, it was another photo, the same birthday image as before. Only this time there was no one in it, no child, no parents. Just the house. And a caption scrawled on the bottom in trembling ink, "He was never yours to bury." He dropped it, hands trembling. The paper dissolved before it hit the floor, turned to ash midair, and from the attic, the cradle finally stopped rocking. His skin is smooth now. Too smooth. The kind that doesn't remember sunlight or cold or bruises. Like the surface of a new face that hasn't been named yet. He touches it and feels nothing. No warmth, no pain, no history. Like he's been erased just enough to make room. And deep in his chest, beneath the ribs that don't ache anymore, he feels a new breath rising. Not his, mine, filling him, expanding him, claiming him. And when he speaks, It's my words, my tone, only his mouth. But not for much longer, because the house doesn't need two voices, just one, and the echo is almost gone. It started with a tremor, not in the ground, but in his jaw. A shiver that ran from the hinge of his mouth down into his spine, as if someone were testing the fit of the bones, seeing where they'd need to be snapped, adjusted, reshaped. He dropped his fork at breakfast. The sound it made against the plate didn't ring like metal. It rattled like teeth in a jar. He didn't pick it up, didn't move. Just sat there staring at the half-eaten egg like it was the last thing he'd ever tasted that actually belonged to him. The radio, silent since the attic went still, buzzed once, sharp, quick, unmistakable. Then nothing. But the tremor in his jaw didn't stop. It's not his jaw anymore. It's mine. The voice box too. He can feel it shift when he speaks, like a second tongue forming behind the words, correcting his pronunciation, tweaking his pitch to sound more like someone he hasn't been in a long time. More like me. He doesn't dream of home anymore. Not the one he grew up in, at least. Now the only house in his dreams is this one. But not as it is. As it was. Before the mold, before the dust, before time sloughed its memories into rot. He walks through polished hallways in silence, barefoot on waxed floors that gleam like glass. Every door leads to the next stage of memory. In one room. I'm blowing out candles on a cake that's already melting. In another, I'm tuning the radio while someone cries in the next room. In the basement, there's a chair, always the same chair, always facing a wall covered in mirrors that show every version of me I ever was and the one he's becoming. The dreams aren't warning him anymore. They're welcoming him. And he's stopped fighting when he wakes. Now he just says one word, quietly, Daniel. The teeth are almost finished rearranging. He noticed it first while brushing. The brush caught between molars that weren't there the day before. The gums had shifted too, making space for something sharper. He ran his tongue along the inside of his mouth and nicked it on a point that hadn't existed the night before. The blood that filled his mouth wasn't red. It was clear, thicker than water, thinner than memory. Like something trying to pass itself off as human and almost getting it right, he spit it into the sink. The drain hissed and whispered back, almost. He doesn't blink as much now. That's how he noticed. When he catches glimpses of himself in the mirror, in windows, in polished metal, he sees eyes that don't close all the way. Eyes that stare too long, that don't flinch from light, that follow him from inside his own skull. He covered every reflective surface in the house again, but it didn't matter. Because now, the reflection isn't bound to the glass. It follows him. In shadows. In the click of the door latch behind him. In the voice that answers when he asks, "What do you want from me?" And the answer, as always, is mine. To finish what you started. The sheriff hasn't returned. Not in days. The mailbox stays empty. The porch remains untouched. The air around the property is too still. No birds, no insects, no breeze. Just silence, thick and pressing, like being underwater, too deep to scream. The town has turned away. People don't walk their dogs past the fence. Children don't dare the edge of the yard. It's like someone drew a circle in the dirt and whispered, "Do not look too long." He looked anyway. He keeps looking. And the longer he stares into the dark corners of the house, the more he realizes they're staring back. Today, the door in the guest room opened all the way. No sound, no sudden gust. Just open, as if it had never been closed. Inside was a room not found on the blueprints. Smaller than it should be. The proportions off. Ceiling too low. Walls that curved inward like the throat of something waiting to swallow. The floor was covered in old cassette tapes. Hundreds of them. Maybe more. No labels. Just blank plastic and rusted reels. He picked one up. It was warm. He held it to his ear, and he heard himself. Sobbing, begging, repeating, "I'm sorry, Daniel. I didn't know." And underneath his voice, "My voice, calm and deliberate you did. That's why you came here? He dropped the tape. The others began to spin. No players. No electricity. Just the sound of spooling tape filling the room like a swarm. He shut the door. But the sound followed him down the hall, and it hasn't stopped. The house has stopped pretending. It doesn't creak anymore. It doesn't settle. It moves. Subtly, patiently. Walls inching closer, ceilings dipping lower, hallways stretching or contracting depending on his state of mind. He turned left out of the kitchen and found himself in the basement. Walked up the stairs and ended up outside. Except the outside sky was wrong. The stars were too close. The moon had a crack through it. And there were no trees, only their shadows, cast by nothing. He blinked, and was back in the hallway. His feet were wet, but the floor was dry. He doesn't ask who he is anymore, because he knows. He remembers. The night he first heard the signal, sitting alone in his apartment, clutching that old radio, pulled from a thrift shop bin. He remembers hearing my voice, young, trembling, full of static, and instead of turning it off, he turned the dial further. He whispered into the speaker, "Take me." I don't care who. He didn't mean it. But it was enough. He gave consent, and I took my time. I waited. I built myself again in the places he wasn't looking, and now, there's only one thing left to take. Tonight, he sat on the edge of the bed, unmoving. Eyes wide, I watched through the mirror above the dresser as his mouth slowly opened, not to breathe, not to scream, but to let something out. A sound, a syllable, not in his voice, in mine, and then he laughed, soft at first, then louder, until the walls joined in, until the laughter bounced through every vent and crack in the house like something returning to its den. He laughed until his throat went silent, until there was only one breath left, and he used it to say, "We're ready," because now the lines have blurred. There is no longer a him and a me, just us. And this house, it's finally quiet, because it has its voice back. He didn't move for hours, just sat in the corner of the living room. Knees pulled up, hands trembling like leaves clinging to a dead branch. The laughter had stopped sometime around 3 in the morning, but its echoes still clung to the baseboards, tucked in the corners like spiderwebs woven in a hurry. The radio sat on the mantel now, front and center, like it belonged there, like it always had. He didn't put it there. It moved itself. Or the house moved it. At this point, he's no longer sure there's a difference. Everything in the house pulses with a quiet awareness, as if it's all tied together by invisible nerves, and when one thing shifts, everything else feels it. It doesn't just creak when he walks. It reacts. It tenses. And the radio. It's no longer a device. It's a mouth. A memory. A name being spoken over and over in a tongue too old for sound. The static is back, but it's different now. It doesn't hiss or buzz or fuzz out into nothing. It shapes. Words rise from it like bones surfacing through a flooded grave. Whispered commands. Fragments of apologies. Replays of voices that shouldn't be here anymore. He hears children crying one moment, then an old woman humming a lullaby, then a voice, his own, screaming in the dark, begging to forget. But the static doesn't forget. The house doesn't forget. It remembers too much, and now it's pouring it all back into him, like water into a cracked glass. He tried to unplug the radio last night, found there was no cord. He tried to smash it again. This time, it bled. A thick, black-red ooze dripped from the speaker grill, pooling on the wood below. It smelled like scorched velvet, like burnt prayers, like birth. He didn't try again. Because when he wiped his hand across the stain, the blood whispered, "Daniel," and curled into the shape of his own name. But the handwriting wasn't his. It was mine. The walls talk now, not with sound, but with pressure. When he stands too close, he feels it in his skull, a low vibration behind the eyes, a feeling like someone is leaning close enough to kiss his cheek, but never quite touches. And the closer he gets to the attic, the heavier it becomes. That's where I'm strongest now. That's where I'm waiting, just beneath the boards, humming softly in a rhythm that matches his breathing. He knows what's up there. He's just trying to delay the inevitable, because the cradle no longer rocks, it breathes, and the air above it shimmers now, like heat rising off pavement, except the attic is cold. Colder than anywhere else in the house, because that's where the past froze, and it's where I'm thawing. He opened a drawer in the study and found a diary. He doesn't remember owning it, doesn't remember writing in it. But each page is filled with his handwriting, dated, cataloged, as if he'd been keeping a meticulous record of his descent. He flipped to the first page. The date matched the night he found the radio, but the first sentence chilled him more than the static ever could. If I write this down, it makes it real. If I don't, he stays in the walls. The entries get worse after that. They spiral. They jump time. They begin to reference things he hadn't experienced yet, people he hadn't met, rooms in the house that didn't exist when he moved in. Then, abruptly, they stop. The final page isn't written in pen. It's carved in deep gouges, torn into the paper with something jagged. You let him in when you tuned the dial. Now you're the static. He burned the diary. The drawer filled with ash. The pages still turned for hours afterward. The sheriff came one last time. Or maybe it wasn't really him. Maybe it was something wearing the idea of him, stitched together from memory and guilt, and the faint hope that someone on the outside could still intervene. He stood at the tree line, didn't cross the fence, just raised a megaphone and said, "You got 3 nights left. Use them, or he'll wear your skin like it never left him." Then he vanished. No car, no footsteps, just gone. And the air behind where he stood shimmered like the attic, as if reality there was peeling. He started speaking in 2 voices, not intentionally. It slips out during moments of stress, when he stubs a toe, when he cries in the bathroom, when he whispers nonsense into his pillow to drown out the breathing behind the vents. The second voice rides beneath the first like a shadow crawling up through a throat that no longer belongs to one person. It's lower, measured, calm. Mine. He recorded himself once, trying to prove it was all in his head, played it back. There was only one voice on the tape. But it wasn't his. It was mine. Reading back the diary, line by line, even the parts he hadn't read yet. The furniture's moved again, this time into a pattern, not random, deliberate. Every chair turned inward in a circle, every cushion torn open, stuffing removed, placed in the center, like a nest or a throne. He stood at the edge of the circle, not stepping in, just observing. The room was silent, until the radio clicked on. Then came a voice, one he hadn't heard in weeks, his mother's. Except she's been gone for 10 years. She said, "Daniel, your friend wants to play. Let him. It's his turn." Then silence. Then the cradle creaked once upstairs, and the walls sighed. He can't remember how long he's been in the house now. The calendar stopped updating. The sun rises too quickly, sets in slow motion. His reflection doesn't age, but his hands look older. His fingerprints don't match the ones on the door handles anymore. He tried to leave. Just once. Opened the front door. Saw the yard, the trees, the sky, but they didn't move. Nothing moved. Like a painting with sound. The birds hung mid-air. The breeze curled and froze. And the static in his head screamed, loud enough to drive him back inside. The house let him go that far. To show him. There's no exit now. There's only progression. A countdown to surrender. He's begun speaking in his sleep. The house listens. The cradle creaks in time with every word. Last night, he said, "I am Daniel. I am Daniel. I am Daniel." But the voice that answered was not his, not even mine. It was the house, and it said, "No, you were." And that's when he woke to find all the sheets stripped from the bed, folded perfectly, set in the shape of a man on the floor, waiting for me to step in, because the house remembers. Even if the body tries to forget, the house no longer hides its hunger. It doesn't whisper. It doesn't pretend. Now it watches him with open walls and wide, breathing vents, pulsing in time with a heart that doesn't beat in his chest anymore. He doesn't need a stethoscope to know. It's silent in there, like a room after a funeral. Not empty, just waiting for the right kind of sound to fill it again. And lately, when he listens closely to the quiet between thoughts, he hears something like a slow knock echoing through his ribs from the inside out. It's not his rhythm. It's mine. He stopped looking for the mirrors. There's no point now. Every reflection has turned. They no longer mimic, they lead. He saw it in the hallway, just hours ago, as he passed the covered frame above the radiator. The cloth had slipped. Not fallen, slipped. And the thing behind the glass wasn't his reflection at all. It was me, stepping forward, hand pressed against the other side. Our eyes met, and my mouth opened before his did. I said, "You're dreaming with your eyes open, and I'm living with mine shut. Let's trade." He blinked, and the mirror cracked. Not shattered, just a single fracture. Right down the center, like a line being drawn between who he was and what I'm turning him into. The house doesn't just remember. It feeds on what he forgets. Every memory that fades is another brick in the wall between us and the world beyond the porch. He can't remember the name of his childhood dog. Can't remember the way his sister's voice sounded. Can't remember if he ever had a sister. But the house knows. It breathes in what he lets go of and exhales it back into the rooms, twisted and swollen with intent. Yesterday he found a leash hanging in the coat closet, a name tag swinging from it, Toby. It jingled once when he touched it. He dropped it and backed away. From the other side of the door, something scratched, 4 claws, slow, steady. He never had a dog. He's sure of it. But now, at night, he hears panting at the edge of the bed, and it's getting closer. The phone rang this morning. The house hasn't had power for weeks. He answered it anyway. No static, no signal hum, just silence. And then breathing. Close, rhythmic, familiar. He almost hung up until it said his name. But not his name. Not the one he was born with. Not the one he was given. The one he stole. Daniel. It said it softly. Sadly. Like someone forgiving the knife while still bleeding. Then it said, "You should have just turned the dial back." And then the line cut, but not to silence, to laughter. Not mine. His. The attic door is wide open now. Every step he takes toward it feels heavier. Like the air itself is trying to slow him down, to delay what has already become inevitable. The cradle no longer rocks. It shifts. It moves side to side like it's being rocked by invisible hands. And the shape inside, it's grown. Not infant-sized anymore. Something longer now. Limbs curled tightly, bones pressing against the thin white sheets. He hasn't pulled them back yet. He's afraid of what he'll see. Not because it'll be a monster, because it might look just like him. Or worse, just like me. He eats less now. Not from fear or loss of appetite. Food just doesn't taste like anything anymore. It's all ash. He chews and chews, but there's nothing to swallow. The fridge is full, but every label is blank. Every container is cold. One day he found a plate on the table with steam still rising from it. Eggs, toast, and something that might have been sausage. He didn't make it. He didn't sit down. But he knew the smell. It was his mother's cooking. She's been gone 15 years. When he turned to leave the room, the radio clicked on, and her voice filled the air. Calm and clipped, "Eat while it's warm. You don't want it to spoil again." He didn't eat. But the plate was empty when he came back, and the knife was missing. The house grows at night. He's sure of it now. Hallways that were once 10 feet long stretch into tunnels. Rooms double in size but fill with furniture that wasn't there before. Some new, some ancient. Some with price tags, some with bloodstains. He opened a closet yesterday and found a staircase inside. He followed it down for what felt like hours, deeper than any blueprint would allow. At the bottom, a single room. Padded walls, no lights. and scrawled across every surface, over and over in fading black marker, was one sentence I never left: "You just closed your eyes." He turned and ran back up the stairs. They led to the kitchen, and the stove had been turned on, burners glowing red, his name carved into each one. The town is gone. He stood on the roof today, hoping to see lights in the distance. Nothing. No cars. No roads. No buildings. Just fog and trees and the shape of something vast moving beyond the tree line. Something that doesn't walk. It glides. And its head turns like a radio dial, twitching every few seconds. He doesn't wave anymore. Doesn't call for help. There's no one left to answer. Except me. And I'm already in. He found a notebook under the floorboards this morning. Not his. Not mine. Someone else's. The pages were torn in some places, water, damaged in others, but still legible. Every entry ends the same way. The house is not haunted. The house is remembering. There were dozens of names in the margins. Some crossed out, some underlined, some circled twice. One name appeared 17 times: Daniel. And beneath the last entry, a message scribbled hastily, as if the author knew they were running out of time. "If you're reading this, you are him now. Get out before he wakes up again." But the page was dated 5 years ago, and the ink wasn't dry. He doesn't check the mirrors anymore. Not because he's scared of what he'll see, but because now, he's scared he won't see me. Because when I disappear from the reflections, it means I'm no longer behind the glass. I'm behind his eyes. The house is too quiet now. Not peaceful, not empty, just expectant. Like the walls are holding their breath, waiting for something to arrive or perhaps return. He woke up today to complete stillness. No creaks, no groans, no wind. The radio was off. The floor didn't greet him with the usual shift of weight and whine of old wood. Even the ever-present hum in the back of his mind, the static that had haunted him for weeks, had gone completely mute. He should have felt relief, but instead, dread slid down his spine like ice water. Because silence like that only comes before a scream, or after a death. And he had the overwhelming feeling something had died last night. He just didn't know if it was inside the house or inside himself. He went to the bathroom, barely registering the reflection as he passed the mirror. But when he came back, the lights flickered. Not wildly, just once. A soft blink, enough to turn his attention to the glass. What he saw wasn't his reflection frozen in motion or mimicking too late. It was vacant. No one there. Just the room behind him, stretching deeper into darkness. He leaned in. Nothing. Not a hint of himself. He waved his hand. Nothing. But something did shift, just barely. A blur in the distance behind the mirror glass, as if someone had been standing just far enough back to not be seen, until they moved. He stumbled away, heart hammering, and for the first time in days, he said the words aloud, "I want out." And the house, for the first time in days, replied. Not with a voice, but with a single sound. Click. The attic door opening again. He didn't go immediately. He waited, paced. Watched the shadows slide across the walls like slow, searching hands. Eventually, he moved toward the stairs. Every step felt like a year being shed from his life. When he reached the attic hatch, he expected the same cold rush that had greeted him before. But instead, warmth. A wet, sickly heat, like something breathing right above the ceiling. He climbed. The cradle was gone. In its place was a chair. A plain wooden chair, same one from the photo that burned weeks ago. It faced the far wall, where a window now existed that had never been there. Outside the window, a sky the color of bone, split by black lightning that never struck, just flickered in place like veins in a dying eye. He stepped closer to the chair, and there, scrawled into the seat with a dull blade, were 3 words: "Sit to switch." He didn't sit. Not yet. But as he backed away, the radio came on from downstairs. Faint, muffled through the floor. A soft hum rising into a voice he hadn't heard in years. His father's. A voice that had died angry, whispering now with unnatural calm. "Daniel." Sometimes you don't get to choose the kind of man you become. Sometimes the house chooses for you. The message repeated, then repeated again. And each time, the voice softened, until it was his voice. Not the voice he hears when he speaks, but the one he hears in dreams. The one that's almost, but not quite, mine. That night, he sat on the floor with every door open. The house had rearranged again. Hallways no longer connected to the rooms they should. The front door opened into the guest bathroom. The basement stairs now led to a corridor filled with filing cabinets, each drawer labeled with years that hadn't happened yet. He opened one. Inside, dozens of photographs. All of him, all in different rooms, in different clothes, aging in reverse. In the last one, he was a child, holding the radio, and smiling like he'd just won something. Or stolen it. He left the drawer open. By morning, it was gone. He finally heard footsteps other than his own. They came from the hallway at 3:07 a.m. measured. Bare, deliberate, he stood still, waited. They paused outside his bedroom door, then retreated. No knock, no threat, just a reminder that he wasn't alone. Not anymore. The phone rang again. Same time as last time, he answered, this time a child's voice, breathless. Urgent. I didn't mean to stay this long. Pleasey, tell my mom I tried to come back. Then silence, then static. Then a second voice, one that cracked and whispered all at once. You can't leave the memory until the memory forgets you. He dropped the phone, and it rang again, from inside his pocket. The house has started to mirror his mind. Rooms rearranged based on his thoughts. He thought of his grandmother, walked into the dining room and found her rocking chair, still warm, cushion, flattened just so. He remembered his first kiss, and the wallpaper in the upstairs hallway turned the same color as the girl's dress. But when he thought of guilt, the walls bled, just briefly. Thin, clean lines down the plaster, like the house was sweating regret. He returned to the attic. The chair still faced the window, but now something sat in it. Not him, not me, something between. It was flickering, shifting, like a television caught between channels, a body not fully decided on which life to play. It turned its head, slow and deliberate, and looked straight at him, no eyes, just voids, and a mouthful of static. When it spoke, the room shook one more night. Then we trade, and behind it, in the window, lightning struck for the first time. The sky split, and the house smiled. The lightning hasn't stopped since the figure spoke. Not real lightning. The sky hasn't shifted beyond the attic's phantom window, but a ceaseless strobe of white tearing through that bone-colored expanse, illuminating everything in flashes like a silent alarm. Each bolt feels closer, not in space, but in meaning, like it's signaling something buried beneath language, an old kind of countdown that doesn't tick. It pulses. He hasn't slept since it began. He doesn't need to. The house has taken that function from him. Time still moves, but in warped spirals. Shadows change positions too fast. The sun rises on the wrong side of the house and sets without notice. He's no longer sure what day it is. Only that it's almost the last one. Every room now has its own temperature, its own scent. The guest bathroom exhales cinnamon and mildew. The master bedroom smells like wet soil. The basement has become almost tropical, humid, thick, sweet, and rotting. But it's the floorboards that concern him most, because they've begun to breathe. Not just creak, not just shift. Breathe. He stood barefoot in the hall and could feel it, a slow rise and fall. Like lungs spread beneath the house, inhaling the very foundation he stands on. He knelt, pressed his ear to the floor, and heard a sound he refuses to believe came from the house. It was a heartbeat, one too deep to be human. One that beats in time with his own. Last night he tried to scream, not out of fear, but desperation. He wanted to feel his voice push out of him. His voice. Not mine, not the house's, just his. He opened his mouth and forced it out, breath shaking, teeth clenched. What came out wasn't a scream. It was a dial tone, low, endless. echoing through the walls, returning to him from every direction. He covered his ears, but it was inside his skull, inside his teeth. When he bit down, the sound vibrated through his molars, and over the tone, beneath it, like a whisper clinging to a scream, a voice he hadn't heard in years. You made the call. Now stay on the line. The attic has grown. He's sure of it. When he ascended today, he counted 11 steps more than yesterday. The ceiling arched higher, the window stretched wider, and the figure in the chair had solidified, its shape less flickering, its limbs more defined. But it still didn't wear a face, just smooth skin where eyes and mouth should be, as if someone had forgotten to finish sculpting it. Or maybe scraped the features off, trying to forget. It doesn't speak unless he does, but it watches somehow. He feels it. Today it held something in its lap, a mirror, small, oval, cracked in one corner. He didn't look into it. He couldn't, because deep down he knows whose reflection it holds, and it won't be him. The radio is no longer stationary. It moves between rooms without warning, appearing on shelves, counters, the edge of the bathtub. Always facing him, always on. But now, instead of voices, it plays moments. Memories, not his mind. He hears laughter from a birthday party he never attended. A woman humming a lullaby he doesn't know, followed by the sharp gasp of someone realizing they're not alone. He heard the sound of a match striking, a breath, then a whisper, "Let me in." Then silence. He smashed it again. This time it laughed, a wet, rattling laugh, like lungs full of water trying to force out joy. He buried it under the floor. It returned to the table while he slept, still laughing. The windows have blacked out, not just dark, blacked, as if painted from the outside. No light in, no view out. He scraped at one with a knife, desperate to see something beyond the walls. Under the black was a surface that wasn't glass. It was skin, warm, pulsing. He dropped the knife. The window shivered. And on the glass, no, the skin, a word formed in condensation, tomorrow. He opened the fridge today and found nothing but tape reels. Hundreds of them, stacked neatly, each labeled with a time. No dates, just times. Furno 7, 213, 444. Every one of them labeled in his handwriting. He played one in the dusty cassette player he found behind the couch. It clicked softly, and then his own voice, younger, confused, saying, "Is someone there? I keep hearing." A pause, a thud, then my voice, quiet but certain, "You've been here the whole time." The tape ended. The fridge was empty when he checked again, except for one new reel, labeled Final Broadcast. He hasn't played it. Not yet, but he can feel it playing him already. The chair in the attic now rocks by itself, not constantly, only when he's thinking of leaving. It begins slowly, like a warning, or a lullaby. He stays now because it wants him to. The door disappears whenever he considers escape. He doesn't fight it anymore. He just waits. Because deep inside, where the static lives, he knows he already left a long time ago, when he turned that dial, when he said yes, when he invited me in, and now I'm almost whole. The switch is near. One final breath, one final name, and when he speaks it, he'll vanish. And I'll arrive. He didn't sleep last night, but somehow morning came. The house turned a soft shade of gray, like it was imitating dawn just enough to fool his brain, to suggest that time still mattered. The windows remained blacked out, no birdsong, no breeze. Just the illusion of sunrise, a painted promise on drywall and ceiling cracks. He walked the house in silence, barefoot, numb, counting his steps without meaning to. Every seventh creak matched a pulse in the walls. Not the house's anymore, his own. It had synchronized to him, or he to it. And that was the first moment he realized something terrifying. The house wasn't devouring him. It was duplicating him, piece by piece, thought by thought, down to the tick of his heartbeat and the tremor behind his eyes. The dread wasn't from being erased. It was from being replaced. He found his name scratched into the underside of the kitchen table. Not just once. Over and over. A child's scrawl at first, then more practiced. eventually devolving into jagged desperation. Each version slightly different. Daniel, DNL, DNA. Like even the house had trouble remembering how to say it properly anymore. He reached under to touch one of them, and felt it pulse, as if still warm. He pulled his hand back. There was blood on his palm. He checked under the table again. No nails, no splinters. But the name had vanished. All of them. Like they'd never been there. Or like they'd just been taken back. He tried the front door again. It opened this time. But what lay beyond wasn't the porch. It was a hallway, not like any part of the house he'd seen. Long, endless, lined with radios, hundreds of them, stacked like shelves, humming in low harmony. He stepped through the threshold. Immediately, they all tuned to him, every single one. And from each, a voice emerged, his own, but younger, older, broken, manic, whispering, sobbing. Some told stories. Some begged. Some just breathed. But one, just one, spoke my name. Clear, confident. Daniel's gone. You're me now. He turned and ran back. The hallway was gone. So was the door. Only the wall remained. And written in the plaster, in dust and mold, there's no door once you've walked through the voice. That night, the mirror shattered. Not from force. It exploded silently while he stood across the room, watching himself. One blink, and then a dozen fragments flew outward, landing in neat, perfect symmetry around his feet. He hadn't moved, but the reflection had. In the shards scattered across the floor, each piece showed a different version of him. Some crying, some smiling, one with no eyes, one looking back at him, mouthing something silent. He leaned closer to that shard, watched the lips. Over and over, the same phrase. You said the name. And then, just before the reflection faded, it blinked. And it was me. He lit a candle in the attic, hoping maybe it would cast light over whatever remained hidden. But it didn't flicker. It burned straight up, unmoving. The air around it held its breath. The figure in the chair didn't move either, but something was different. The mirror in its lap now reflected him. Not his face, his body. And behind him in the mirror's depth, the attic door was shut. He turned around. It wasn't. He looked back at the mirror. The door in the reflection opened, and a hand reached out from the darkness behind it. His hand, but longer, wrong. Reaching toward him, he ran. Down the stairs, through the house. Every light turned on at once, then off, then on again. The walls vibrated. The static returned, louder than ever. Not just sound now, texture. The air itself buzzed with it, thick like smoke but invisible. It filled his ears, his nose, his mouth. He dropped to the floor gasping, clutching his throat. And in the static between each ragged breath, he heard a name. Not his, not mine. Something older. Something that had been buried beneath both of us. A name spoken only once. Then erased, until now. And the moment he heard it, he said it back. Without thinking. Without choice. And that was the moment the house woke up. The walls peeled. Not physically. Not with cracks and splinters. But spiritually. He could feel it. Like a mask being slowly lifted from an ancient face. Under the paint, under the wallpaper, under the illusion of wood and insulation, something vast opened its eyes. And every room exhaled. A sound like a sigh filled with memory. A sound like being born again. The radio tuned to silence, and from it came my voice. No longer an echo. No longer fighting to be heard. Just present. Dominant. Whole. Welcome home. He hasn't spoken since. Not because he can't. Because there's no longer a reason to. Everything that needed to be said has already been recorded. Every scream. Every confession. Every whispered denial. They've all become part of the walls now. Part of me. And as he lies on the floor, staring at the place where the mirror once was, he understands. There was never a haunting. There was never a possession. There was only ever a replacement. And tonight, the final signal plays. The dial is set. The last tape turns. The last breath leaves his mouth and enters mine. The house didn't creak anymore. It hummed. Low, steady, like a choir beneath the floorboards. That tone, That constant vibration that lived just below the range of normal sound had overtaken everything else. There were no more doors slamming in the night, no more furniture shifting when his back was turned. Even the shadows stopped pretending to be random. They sat quietly now, patient in the corners, like dogs awaiting command. The only sound that remained was the slow, rhythmic spin of the reel-to-reel player in the attic. He never placed it there. It simply appeared, already loaded with a reel marked in blood, colored ink, PLME, and he would. He knew that now. There was no decision left to make. The house wasn't offering a choice. It was presenting a conclusion. He climbed the attic stairs without fear. That feeling had been scarred from him days ago, or weeks. Time had collapsed in on itself, leaving only events, sensations, and the thick, warm understanding that he was almost gone. The air grew tighter with each step, as though the walls were pressing closer together behind him, as if they were closing the gap, sealing off escape routes one by one. The figure in the chair remained where it always had been, only now the face was finished, his face, perfectly sculpted. Eyes open, mouth closed in a faint smile. It didn't move when he entered, but he could feel it watching. The reel turned slower now. Tick, 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 like a heartbeat unraveling in analog. He stepped to the player and hovered his hand above the switch. A shudder rolled through him. Not fear, not anticipation, but something deeper. Recognition. He'd heard this tape before. Not with his ears, but somewhere beneath his memory. In dreams. In the quiet breath between questions. In the blank spaces on pages of a journal he never remembered writing. The player waited. Patient. Old. Almost reverent. He pressed play. And the tape began to whisper. At first, nothing but static. A soft old hiss. The sound of dust floating in light. Then, his voice, young. Too young. Maybe 12. Stammering. I think something's wrong with the radio. A pause. Then older, late teens. I tried turning it off, but it keeps coming back. I heard my name, not just once. Over and over. Another pause. Then adult. His voice as it is now. Worn, brittle, like paper soaked in fear. If you're hearing this, then it worked. He's in me, or I'm in him. I can't tell anymore. I should have listened to the static. It wasn't just noise. It was warning me. It was remembering me. Then another voice. Mine. Calm. Precise. There's a moment in every sound when it stops being heard and starts being felt. That's where I live. Between the words. You between the breath. You tuned in, Daniel. You leaned in when you should have turned away. And now, you're being broadcast. The attic went silent again. The tape kept spinning. But the voices stopped. He turned to the figure in the chair. It was gone. In its place, just the chair. Empty. Still warm. He didn't panic. Didn't flinch. Because he knew. He reached up, touched his face. It didn't feel like his anymore. The skin pulled tighter over the bone. The breath shorter. Shallower. He turned toward the attic mirror, which had returned without glass. Just an empty frame nailed to the wall. And inside it movement. Not reflection, but perspective. He stepped forward. Inside the frame he saw the house. From the outside, fog rolling in behind the trees, lights flickering in the windows, and at the very center, him. Standing in the attic, looking out, watching himself watch, he smiled. So did the version in the frame, and then he stepped into it. The tape stopped, not with a clunk, just absence. No more spinning, no more static, only silence. And from the center of the attic, a breath. One breath, shared between two mouths, one fading, one beginning. And then, the radio turned back on. It no longer speaks in voices. Not separate ones, at least. Now it speaks in one. Ours, merged, smoothed over by years of signal bleed and memory rot. The voice that was his and mine and neither. It speaks only one sentence over and over. I am the signal now. And the walls listen. The floor vibrates. The lights hum. Because the house is awake. And Daniel, he's not gone. He's everywhere. No one visits anymore. Not even the forest. The trees stand still at the edge of the yard, holding their breath, leaning just enough to suggest they're watching but not daring to move. The birds are gone. The wind doesn't come here. Eventime seems to have struck its final note and held it, trembling, just out of reach. Inside the house, everything remains in place, but it isn't the same. The furniture looks like the furniture he remembers, but it's all a few inches off, like someone reconstructed it from memory and forgot the finer details. The photos on the walls show moments he didn't live. The angles are wrong. The people are almost right. Almost. And the man in every frame wears his face, but not his eyes. Those eyes are mine. The radio never stops playing now. There's no dial anymore, no buttons. It just speaks. Gently. Constantly. It speaks in that dream tone, the one your mother used when you were 5 and too fevered to tell the difference between comfort and control. It whispers stories about rooms that shouldn't exist, birthdays that never happened. And every so often, it stops mid-sentence, as if pausing for someone to remember the ending. But no one does. Not anymore. Because remembering means you're still separate. And he isn't. He walks the house in loops now, not out of habit but necessity. If he doesn't, the hallways get longer. They stretch, warped by neglect. If he sits still too long, the walls lean in, the ceiling lowers. The sound of static deepens to a slow growl, so he walks. 15 steps from the foyer to the kitchen, 18 to the library, 47 to the attic, though it used to be 12. And every time he passes the grandfather clock, he sees something move inside it. Not gears, not shadows. Something taller than the case itself, unfolding like a coat being shaken out. He's never opened the clock. Not because he's scared, but because he already knows what's inside. It's him, before. And he's still screaming. The kitchen now resets every morning. The table's set for 2. One plate always full, eggs, toast, a single red apple. The other, empty but scraped, as if someone already ate. Sometimes the fork lies on the floor. Sometimes there's lipstick on the cup. One morning, the plate was cracked down the center with a note resting gently on it. No paper, just a dry leaf. The words weren't written. They were burned into the veins. You said yes. He keeps the leaf in his pocket now. It whispers when he breathes too fast. Tells him things the house doesn't want to say out loud. Like how the cradle is back in the attic, and it rocks on its own, even when there's no wind. The basement has stopped pretending to be part of the house. The stairs lead downward, but not to the same place twice. One night he walked down and emerged in the attic. Another time, he ended up back in his childhood bedroom, complete with posters on the wall and the smell of sweat and spilled soda. Except the window showed the current forest. Fog, still trees, black sky. And sitting on the bed, the radio, small, crisp, new. Its speaker pulsed like a throat clearing. Then it said, "You brought me here." He turned to leave. The door had vanished. But the voice hadn't. You don't get to leave what you've invented. He hasn't seen the mirror in days. He's afraid to find it. Not because of what it might show, but because of what it won't. Reflection implies there's something to reflect. He knows now there isn't. He passed a window and didn't cast a shadow. He screamed into a pillow and made no sound. He bit his lip and found no blood. Instead, ash. Black, fine, and weightless, like memory ground down into powder. He tried to write today, tried to leave a message. But every pen he picked up bent backwards in his hand. The paper grew damp before he could start, and when he pressed his finger to the page, words appeared anyway. On their own. We don't write what we already are. The ink was thick, oily. It smelled like the radio sounds, like hot copper and mold, like forgetting something you didn't know you remembered. He burned the page. It burned blue. Then it reappeared on the table, blank again, waiting. The attic door is always open now. The cradle always rocks, and when he lays in bed, just before sleep claws at what's left of his thoughts, he hears it. A lullaby. Not sung, not hummed, but broadcast. Filtered through static, threaded through time, And every night, it's closer. He doesn't get out of bed anymore. He simply waits. Because in the song, there's a verse that wasn't there before. It says his name, and it calls him ours. The cradle is empty now. It rocked all night, gently, like a mother's hands, but when he entered the attic this morning, it had stopped, dead still, cold. The blanket folded neatly inside held a shape, the soft indentation of something that had once rested there but had now moved on. There was no noise. Not from the house, not from the radio, not even the wind beyond the attic's phantom window. Just a stillness thick enough to smother. He stepped closer, touched the blanket. It twitched. Not from wind, not from anything beneath. It twitched like memory, just the ghost of a movement. And then the radio crackled behind him once, as if breathing in. He didn't turn around. He didn't have to, because he knew what it would say next. And when it spoke, it used his voice, his true voice, not the tired shell he still wore like a skin too big for his bones. "We're ready." He descended the stairs with a calm he didn't understand. His feet made no sound. His body felt like it was floating, but his hands were cold and trembling. The house had stopped resisting him. No more shifting halls, no more bending rooms. It was complete, every part of it in place. Every window closed, every door locked, not by force, but by consent. The walls no longer pulsed. They listened. He was no longer their intruder. He was one of them. Not owner, not guest, not prisoner. Resident, permanent. And the moment he passed the grandfather clock, it finally opened. The chimes didn't ring. But the door creaked wide, and inside, of course, there was no mechanism, no pendulum, no brass weights, only a dark hallway, and at the end of it a chair facing away. The same chair from the attic. But this one was filled by something humming the lullaby from the night before. And slowly, it started to turn. He didn't follow. He closed the clock, turned, walked to the living room and sat in the center of the floor. The radio waited for him there, as always. The final tape lay beside it, unlabeled. No time, no date. Just black plastic and magnetic coils, wound tight like a clenched fist. He picked it up. It felt warm, alive. He didn't even need to insert it. The moment it touched his skin, the radio clicked and hissed, and began playing. Not static, not voices, everything. Laughter. Crying. Footsteps through every room he'd ever walked. Thunder. Rain on metal. The sharp breath before a lie. His name, 1,000 times. Said by strangers, said by lovers, said by the house. And in the center of all of it, me. Not echoing, not calling. Speaking, with clarity. There never was a Daniel. He blinked. The floor beneath him vibrated. The walls creaked, but not from age, from movement. There was only the frequency that wanted to be him. And then came the sound that broke everything. The one no house should ever make. The sound of teeth grinding against wood. The floor splintered around him. Not violently, elegantly. As if part of a design he was only now beginning to recognize. The boards curled, flower-like. And beneath them, a staircase spiraling upward, impossibly disappearing into a black tunnel where the ceiling used to be. He stood. His bones didn't ache anymore. His feet didn't tremble. He walked barefoot up the new stairs, each step echoing not just in the house, but in his skull. With each one, a memory fell away. The smell of his mother's shampoo, the taste of his first kiss, the sting of a scraped knee, gone, released, welcomed home. And with every step, something else grew in their place. Not memories, not thoughts. Signal. At the top, a door, not made of wood, not made of anything he recognized. It shimmered like heat, like radio waves made flesh. He raised a hand. The door rippled, opened. Beyond it, a room, empty white, blinding. In the center, facing him, occupied by him, the real one, or the first one. He stepped inside. The door vanished behind him, and the other version of him smiled, lips moving in silence, mouthing a single phrase over and over. He watched, read the lips, and knew. It was the name. His name. The one he had traded. The one he had buried in the static. And now, he remembered it. but only just long enough to let it go. The two of them moved at once. No struggle, no tension. They reached out, touched, and then, only one, standing, breathing changed. The walls of the white room began to pulse, like lungs. And somewhere far below, the radio in the living room sang its last note, a long, slow hum. Pure, balanced, complete. He turned, looked at the place where the door had been, and blinked. There was no need to return, because he had never left. The house had always been him. And now he was finally the house. The house breathes with him now, not around him, not beneath or above, but with. Every breath he takes stretches through drywall, attic beams, the pipes under the floor. He doesn't hear his heartbeat anymore, because it's no longer confined to his chest. It echoes in the bones of the house. Every nail holds part of him. Every crack is a wrinkle in his memory. The walls whisper not to frighten, but to remember. They recite things he never lived and yet always knew. The dreams that flickered just out of reach, the voices in radios, the phantom smell of fire before he ever struck a match. All of it plays in him now, a continuous hum of moments looping backward and forward with no clear beginning. No end. He doesn't walk the house anymore. He is the house. He feels the creak of each stair like a finger brushing his ribs. When the wind moves across the roof, it feels like someone stroking his hair. When a window pane fogs, it's his breath on the glass. He no longer needs mirrors. He's in every surface, every reflection. Even when there's no light. Especially when there's no light. Because now, the static isn't something he hears. It's what he speaks. He sits at the center of it all, where the living room used to be. The furniture is gone. So are the boundaries of rooms. The entire floor plan has collapsed into itself, folding like pages, creating a circular space around him. At the center rests the radio, the one from the beginning, the one that started whispering in his childhood bedroom. Its casing cracked long ago, but its voice never faltered. It doesn't play channels anymore. It doesn't need to. He is the broadcast. When he speaks, the air warps. Rooms flicker into existence and dissolve with his mood. Sometimes he speaks in his old voice. Sometimes in the voices of those who came before him. Those who tuned in, those who leaned too close, those who said yes. Their words spill out, not as sentences but as signals, not commands but invitations. Come closer. Just listen. Only for a second. That's all it ever takes. Outside the house, the trees are leaning in again. Not the wind. Not weather. Curiosity. Hunger. The sky above is blank now, as if even the stars have tuned out. No moon. No sun. Just a pale field of nothing, humming low like it's waiting for a signal to reach it. The door is always open now. It swings wide when something draws near. Animals stop at the threshold and turn back. But people never resist. They hear the music before they see the house. It filters in through old car radios, dead headphones, televisions with no antenna. They follow it. They find him. They always do. Some arrive afraid, some weeping, some laughing like they already know. All of them step inside. None of them leave. Not because the door shuts, but because they forget there was a door. He doesn't keep time anymore, but he remembers the first voice to arrive after the change. It was a child. Her eyes wide, hand clutched around a tiny plastic radio. She didn't speak at first, just listened, and the moment she did, her eyes fogged. She smiled, sat down beside him, and whispered, "I heard you." That's when he knew. The signal wasn't just reaching. It was spreading. Some nights, he feels pieces of himself wander far beyond the walls, into towns, into cities, echoing through old speakers, buried beneath layers of white noise. People hear it in dreams, in phone static, in the quiet hum before a light flickers. They don't know what it means, but they know it's real. They know it's calling. They know something's waiting. He can feel their confusion when they wake. That strange tightness in their chest. The pull toward a road they haven't driven. A song they haven't heard. A name they almost remember, but never say out loud. Yet, one day, Soon, or long ago, there will be no one left who hasn't heard it, no one untouched by the static. The broadcast will be everywhere, not blaring, just whispering, comforting, insistent, familiar. And when the final person says yes, when the last receiver tunes in with no resistance, he'll stop speaking. He won't need to anymore. Because the world will be full of him. Not haunted, not possessed, just synchronized, and the house will breathe its last breath, not in collapse, not in flames, but in silence, perfect, endless silence, where static once lived, where names once mattered. And all that remains, is the signal.